We're live.
Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to the Newcastle Town Board meeting of January 14th. The board has been in executive session and would now like to open the public work session. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so today we would like to welcome our consultants from Marist Poll, Barbara Carvalho, sorry if I'm butchering your name.
Beautifully done.
And thank you, and Michael Conti. We welcome you and to present the results of the survey regarding the use of possible future uses of the 23 acres of town-owned land around the Chappaqua train station. I just want to alert everyone that this session is simply to hear the presentation on the survey and your interpretation of those results. We're not here to announce any conclusions on our part about what we're going to do regarding the results of the survey. This session is not for that purpose. It's for the board to understand the results and to ask the consultants questions. And we will give the public the opportunity to also ask questions, but not to delve into great and lengthy detail about methodology and what they think the consultants think we should do with the property.
Recording in progress.
1 second. Have we just started recording?
It just started recording, but we've been live.
Alright, so we were live but no one could hear us?
They can hear you.
Did they hear what I said from the opening?
Yes.
Just wasn't
It
being
won't
preserved.
be in the tape though.
You might wanna
Zoom-
repeat it,
Yeah,
The
you should
Zoom
repeat
wasn't
it.
recording, I think.
you're right,
I think the production itself,
so YouTube still got it.
please.
Well, so I apologize to anyone watching. I'm going to repeat what I said. We're unclear as to whether the recording was working. So I want to welcome everyone again to the January 14th meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Newcastle. The board has been in executive session and we have already had a motion and second to open the public work session. We are here with consultants from Marist Poll, Barbara Carvalho and Mike Conti to present the results of the survey regarding the 23 acres of town-owned land and the future uses of that land, which is a project that we embarked on last May with in-person engagement sessions where we received feedback which informed the second step of a survey to all residents. So I will let you describe that in more detail. But we are here to simply understand the results of the survey and to give the board the opportunity to ask questions. We will give the public the opportunity to ask questions as well, but we will limit that to a total of perhaps 20 minutes. We are not anticipating that people will ask very lengthy questions about what we're going to do with the results. This is not for today. That will be for a later date. So with that, I will hand it over to you and let you get started.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to present the results of the survey to you. Thank you also for all the effort and insights and preparation that you did in order for us to be able to construct a questionnaire and to design this research so that we could understand what residents of the town think about the different possible uses or not use at all of the property that is by the train station. I'm Barbara Carvalho, I'm director of the Marist Poll. It's very much a part of the design and implementation of the survey. I'd also like to just start out by thanking residents for their participation. We do a lot of surveys of communities around the state, around the country, and it is always wonderful to see a community that is connected to where they live and has a stake in what that community's future is going to be. And I think that in terms of the response rate and the comments that we received, you should be very proud of yourselves because it really shows incredible amount of community engagement. I think at a time when people sense that a lot of folks are not connected, invested, and wanting to participate in government, either at the local level or any other level. So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Michael Conti, and he is going to first start out with the methodology and overview of how we approached collecting the information, and then some of the general results of the survey. So Mike,
Yep.
have fun.
Thank you. And I am just going to share my screen on Zoom, and then I am muted on Zoom because I believe I'm going through this microphone, but if anyone can't hear me on Zoom, just let me know and we can adjust that. So let's see, is this gonna pull me up? Yay, all right. Alright, so yep, as Barbara mentioned, basically just a brief kind of overview of the methodology, which we should all be familiar with at this point. So this was a community-wide survey. So that consisted of ultimately 3 rounds of mailings. The first 2 had both the full paper copy of the survey as well as a link to the survey, and then we had a 3rd round which was just a postcard that had a link to the survey. So as Barbara mentioned, we had round mailing alone. Ultimately we ended up with 1,679 unique households. So that's really the representative sample that we're looking at. So between all 3 mailings, we did talk to a little bit more residents than that, but again, the focus here is on that representative sample that we did. So ultimately, when we collected that data, it was balanced based on age, gender, and race to make sure that we are representative of the town as a whole.
Could I ask a question about the response rate?
Yes.
You said that it was a really good response rate,
Yep.
but so I calculated it was around 28%.
Yeah, about 28, 29%.
So what is typical for
Yep.
these types of mailings and surveys?
For a community survey, I mean, honestly, you can look at anywhere from basically 5 to 20%, 5 on the low end, 20% would be considered a good response rate. So the fact that, we're really getting close to 30% there really kind of speaks to the engagement of the town. So when we saw that, originally, I was hoping for 500. So I really just wanted to we really weren't sure how things were gonna hit. It really depended on, how much people care about the issue at hand. So the fact that we got a 30% response rate really just shows that people are engaged and they were checking their mailboxes, which is great.
Thank you.
And during a busy time too.
So the report goes a little more into this, but I did just want to kind of cover this is what we call the nature of the sample. So it's really just the composition of that data set. So of those 1,679 residents, this is the percentages of each of them based on a lot of the key demographics that we were looking for. And again, ultimately that data set was balanced to make sure it's representative based on age, gender, and race for the town. Alright, so basically just moving right in to the key results. So the main thing that we wanted to do was really just get a sense of people's support for development in different land usage plans for the plot. Again, I just want to kind of reiterate, this survey was particularly about the land surrounding the Chappaqua train station. So, this isn't talking about, different types of development in the town as a whole. So really just kind of frame your mindset around it is around this specific plot of land. So to gauge kind of interest in basically priority levels, we asked pretty much do you support or oppose development in a couple different ways. The first you'll see is we used a variation of the Net Promoter Score to really kind of give basically a 0 to 10. How much a priority do you think it is for the town to develop this land? So then we ultimately grouped the 0 to 4s we kind of considered a not a priority, the 5 to 7s a mid-level priority, and the 8 to 10s being a high priority. So as we see here, we see 55% said not a priority, but when we're really talking about, eyes tend to get drawn to that 8 to 10 high priority level. When we combine that with the mid-level, we're looking at, almost about 40% who rate some sort of development as at least a mid-level priority. Just to kind of balance that Net Promoter Score, we also just asked a binary at the end of the survey, just would you like to see the town of Newcastle invest in the development of this land? And we can see 50% of people said no, 45% said yes. So it kind of seems like, most things in this country at this point are coming down to an almost 50-50 split. So you can kind of look at that as, maybe there's an uphill battle towards development, but also that does mean almost half of people do wanna see something used in that land.
But almost half
So,
don't. More than
Exactly, so it's
half
going to
don't.
be a glass half full, half
is
empty
it
type
good for you if we
situation.
ask questions as we go
Absolutely,
along?
please.
So I just wanna clear up, when you use the term development, you don't mean simply housing.
Oh,
You mean
absolutely not.
development of
Yeah.
the land in terms of
Changing
walkways, pathways,
Yep.
more vegetation, natural landscapes, changing the circulation patterns, all of the above.
Yeah, which we're gonna get into.
Because people did not really understand the use of that word, and I just wanna say, so when you say that people you see that there are 40% of responses indicate that development is a mid-level priority. That doesn't mean that housing is a 40% mid-level priority. It means that some form of development, we don't know what yet, you haven't said,
Correct.
we haven't said what kind of development people
Right, and I
want.
think, we, again, when we're measuring people's opinions, are gonna get kind of gut reactions. When people hear development or they hear different usage plans that are gonna cost money, you might have an initial reaction, which is why one of the things we did in the survey is we made sure to ask all questions of everybody. So just because someone answered one of those initial questions as, I think this is a low priority, we still ask them all the different questions about, walkability, preserving natural spaces, do you wanna see housing here, do you wanna see recreational spaces? We asked all questions of everybody, so ultimately, if the town does decide to move forward with plans, you're not basing any decisions just off the people who said yes and answered those questions. You have the opinions of everyone who answered the survey, even those who initially, their reaction is opposed to development or different usage plans. So,
Actually, Mike, that gives me another, brings me to a question. So you asked all the questions of everyone, but they weren't required to answer.
no.
So there's a lot of sections where it says no response. Did you notice any themes or correlation to who was not responding to the number of questions, or was it kind of all across?
It was basically across the board, and it really kind of I take no responses as an unsure. It's almost as basically they just really don't know, they're not necessarily pro or against, they just don't really know how they're falling. That's why on some of the questions we included just outright responses of unsure to measure that. Other ones, we didn't include that option, and we wanted them to pick, a lot of this is hypothetical. So it's not necessarily saying you're making any decisions right now, but you wanna know, okay, so if we were gonna do something kind of recreational based, do you wanna see more of like an outdoor sports thing, an indoor sports thing? Again, this is really just to gauge general interest at this point of what people wanna look at. So yes, because of it being a paper survey, people can just leave things blank, but it wasn't like one segment of the population was more likely to do it, it was kind of just across the board. They didn't tend to be that high, but on certain questions, we'll see the ones especially that we had unsure responses, such as the condition of town hall, where we wanted to make sure we had an outright unsure, just to make sure we're getting an accurate measure of things.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Alright, so after we got that, it was the priority score, we started with it. We really just wanted to get people's initial reaction to development, and then when that binary question came at the end, once they've had a chance to kind of see the different options here. So this is a chart that basically we asked them to prioritize all the different kind of forms, the possibilities of development. So what we see here is basically, again, so the blue lines are the not a priority scores, and then we have the mid-levels and high priorities. It's very clear, residents do want they are not opposed to usage or development plans in general. They're really focusing on anything that has to do with the pedestrian experience and enhancing and preserving the natural environment. So when I look at this, I see, alright, walkability, preserving and enhancing green spaces. When I see commercial spaces though, yes, 48% rated that as not a priority, but that also means almost half listed that as at least a mid-level priority. So again, we're really kind of diving into the numbers, and you have to really see this can be interpreted both ways, because a lot of this is kind of split right down the middle. But when we're looking at what's really considered a high priority, so the things that you can be really confident this is the type of plans people would put their support behind, it's really about walkability connections, preserving and enhancing green spaces. We also broke it down by key demographic groups. So who are the groups kind of driving opinions here? And we can see across the board, the plurality of the key demographic groups we looked at, so that being family or households with children, households without children under 18. We broke it down by income levels, so under over 250,000 a year, as well as age levels under over 45. Regardless of this, each demographic group really was focused on either improving the pedestrian experience of the area or preserving and enhancing green spaces within the area.
So while we see a bit of a split in terms of develop or not develop, we see pretty much an overwhelming no to housing and professional spaces.
Yes.
That's pretty strong throughout the survey response.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the key thing is pretty much housing. We do have a few follow-up questions about housing specifically, but yes, keep that in mind where that really was very minimal interest. A lot of, we had a lot of people call over the phone also. You can do it online, you can do it on paper. I did a lot of surveys with residents over the phone, and a key theme here is people love the town, they love the charm of the town, they love the small town feel, they don't wanna mess with that.
Yep.
They wanna do things that are gonna enhance that rather than kind of take it away and change basically the vibe of the town. And it seems like developing housing in that area, and again, think of it's this specific plot of land. So it's not I don't want this extrapolated like no one wants new housing in the town at all. It's really focused on this 23 acres of land surrounding the train station.
But we're not currently considering any development anywhere else. I wanna be very clear on that. This is specific to the train station,
Yep.
so this isn't.
Yeah, and we made sure that residents understood that. We had maps on the paper survey, we had maps
Yes.
on the online surveys, we reiterated multiple times that it's really this specific plot of land to make sure people had that frame of reference in mind.
And we did that before you came on board to start the survey. We had extensive advertising
Yeah.
regarding this,
Walking.
before the spring, and we had engagement sessions in May. So I think it was very clear that we were focusing on the train station area.
Yeah, I think that came through in the survey. So again, hypothetical. We do know that housing is really seen as basically not a priority for development of this area, but again, we wanna make sure that we are understanding people's opinions, so there were some follow-ups. So if housing were to be developed in this area, we asked, would you prefer mixed-use buildings with retail on the ground floor, affordable housing for seniors and young adults, condos and townhomes, or workforce housing? Really I'm gonna use the word plurality. So when I use that, I basically mean, we're used to majorities is over 50%. When we have multiple options, plurality, it didn't receive 50%, but it did receive the highest percentage. So here that mixed use housing, 47% would be the plurality of responses. So that is a key consensus area. So no one really wants housing, but if they did, this is the type that would be preferred in the areas that mixed use
Can I
type.
ask you a question here? So if you go back to the previous slide, the people who answered that housing was a low priority, the 74%. Were those included in the ones who then answered the housing question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we wanted to make sure that if any decisions that are made, ultimately you don't want to go back and have people saying, well, I didn't want development, so my opinion wasn't included in that. We asked all questions of everybody just to make sure all opinions were represented for any decisions that may or may not be made.
And that's an explicit decision in your methodology to approach it that way.
Yes,
To
and
take
that
people
was
down different paths.
right, and that was something that we kind of discussed ahead of time, along with we knew we wanted a representative sample, but we also knew we wanted to make sure everybody who wanted to give their opinion did. So if we had a question in the beginning, we wanted to make sure we were asking that general priority, so that scale priority question, how much do you prioritize development, and that binary question that came at the end, we wanted to make sure we asked them in both places, and then in between, give people, this might be the first time they've had certain ideas there. So it was measured that way, but again, it all was a part of the plan ahead of time.
Refresh my
of the-
recollection.
oh.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Of the 74% for whom housing was a low priority, did you notice that they skipped the subsequent question of what kind of housing they would want? Or do you think that a preponderance of them did answer?
Yeah, we can go back and look that up. I mean, the 17% no response rate, I think people kind of understood that, if we're asking a question, there's no outright unsure. We wanted them to pick an answer, but we didn't want to force anything. So some of them most likely are in that no response rate.
Okay, I think that answers it.
Right, and as you know, there's a lot of data here. You know, as you kind of dive into both the written report as well as that banner packet that really breaks everything down, when you have questions like that, shoot them our way. You know, we can run the data, we can cut it, even though these are kind of final results. We're not disappearing anywhere. We're happy to basically, that's a good idea. Let's kind of break the data down this way. That's definitely easy enough for it to do.
Thank you.
So in terms of priority, residents chose one out of these categories, correct?
Yes.
For this chart, so everyone got
This chart or the
I
other?
think
This
I
this
think
chart,
you're
so you're choosing
No,
this,
but not the one that's on this one.
that's what I'm referring
Yeah,
to.
so this was a
Get
pick
to
one.
choose
This
Right,
was
right,
just
right,
a pick one. Yep.
So one could still, priority is a relative term, so one could want mixed use building with commercial, but not necessarily oppose or actually want affordable housing, but they want it by way of mixed use commercial and residential. So it's when I say it's a little
They're not
difficult to
mutually
read,
exclusive.
they're not mutually exclusive, exactly.
Correct, and that actually was a point I was gonna make when we get to the recreational. You know, a lot of people, they thought there was gonna be this big number for the indoor rec space, but more people were really relied on, we wanted just parks or open spaces. That doesn't mean people didn't want indoor rec space, it just meant that was a pick one option, it just meant they more wanted green space. So it's
Right.
not necessarily a no, it's just think of that as priorities.
Is
So-
there a reason you don't do an all of the above? Like, let's say, someone wanted like 3 out of 4 of these things, or, there was no way to, put workforce, affordable and mixed use all together.
Yeah, we could, but that doesn't really provide you with information. So when we're asking people to really pick one, because otherwise if you get an all of the above response, that itself gives you information. Hey, people are pretty open to it. But when we were going into this and when we were working with you guys to develop the questionnaire, it was really what do people most want? What is the top priority? What type of development do you think you can actually get done? So throughout this, there will be some where it was more select all that apply, or we have a bunch of what we call batteries, which was kind of this, where they got each of these as an option and we're asked to rank them. So that way we can really see what people want. But again, there is value in knowing if you had to choose. So, you're not gonna necessarily be able to do all the development plans, so what is the most important one? Alright, any questions on this, or?
Just one more question about that 17% no response. Can you just say again how you're interpreting that? Are you assuming those are people who don't want any sort of new housing?
I mean, I'm hesitant to assume, but what I do know is they didn't wanna answer the question.
Okay.
So, and I think that if they, felt one way or another, they would answer it. So this is basically just, people who are either unsure or just
Neutral.
yes.
And we can take a look at each question by every other question. So for instance, you can look at that question in terms of what they said initially about whether they wanted development or not. So we can create a profile of people who didn't respond.
I'm particularly interested in understanding the other aspects of the no response.
Yeah, we can definitely follow up on that.
Yeah, me too.
Alright, then we had one other housing specific question, was basically if housing were to be developed in, so again hypothetically, which would you think should be the top priority? So it was either new homes for purchase or new homes for rent, which we see a slim majority would prefer new homes for purchase rather than basically rentable homes in the area. That was by far across demographics, that was the response for either a majority or plurality based on the different subgroups that we were looking at. So this is, I feel like, one of the most interesting questions here. So this was one where we did want to include an outright, no new business response. So which of the following types of businesses would you most like to see more of in this area? So this was a pick one. So we can see here that commercial spaces such as restaurants, cafes, or small retail shops, 56% was the response of 56% of residents overall. 29% did say no new businesses. What's interesting here, and let me just make sure, I wanna make sure I'm giving you the right figures here. So we did add a crosstab on the banners, which you'll look at, of people who said yes or no to that initial development question. Even 43% of people who said no to that binary question, do you wanna see town investment on this? And did provide the answer of commercial spaces rather than no new businesses. So when you're framing it like this, people said, no, I don't really want development, but then when we're asking things like this, where, you know, commercial spaces, entertainment venues, fitness centers, professional services, or no new businesses, still even 43% of people who said they were opposed to development, instead of choosing no new businesses, chose, hey, you know, maybe I would like to see some small commercial retail shops in the area. So I think that kind of signified to me as, yes, there's, at first it looked like, oh, people are outright opposed to the development. It's really how you frame it and exactly what's being developed. I think we really took a general approach here. As you get more specific with certain plans, you know, you might see support levels, you know, adjust a little bit. And across the board here, so again, residents overall, families with children, families without children, regardless of income or regardless of age, the majority of people did select, oh, commercial spaces here rather than no new business. We then moved on to recreational places. So same kind of question, you know, which of the following recreational amenities would you most like to see developed in this area? And again, this is the one I'm kind of talking about where we see multi-purpose sports fields only has 5%. Again, this doesn't necessarily say only 5% of people want to see it. Think of this more as like a priority ranking. Well, most people, again, this is just, we're gonna talk pluralities here because it is only 28%. But walking and biking trails came up top. So again, it goes to that idea of just enhancing the pedestrian experience of the area, keeping that kind of small town charm going. But we did see a good amount of support for a town pool also. So again, this doesn't necessarily mean these aren't, as you said, mutually exclusive. People could want more than one of these things, but we wanted to get an idea of what people wanted most, and it was pretty much walking and bike trails, pedestrian experience type things. So we asked about, right where we are, town hall. So this is one where we knew we needed to include an unsure response. So from what you have read or heard or seen about the current town hall building, which comes closest to your opinion. So as we see, 42% of people were unsure. So, you know, we asked, do you think the appearance is satisfactory, but the mechanicals need replacement? The appearance is outdated, but mechanicals are in good shape. Both appearance and mechanicals need replacement, or town hall is fine. So we saw 42% really didn't know how to answer that question. 27% thought town hall was in good shape itself. And then 29%, so that's about, you know, just under a third of people do think there's some kind of issue. So whether it's just the 7% who said the appearance is satisfactory but the mechanicals need replacement, or the appearance is outdated and the mechanicals are in good shape. So we've got about just under 30%, 29% of people who recognize there is an issue with town hall, about 27% of people who think, hey, it's fine, and the vast plurality of people, almost 42%, really not sure how to answer that question. So then the community center. So if town hall, again, hypothetically, if the town were to build a community center in this area, which of the following would you most like to see the new center include? And this is where we can see a pretty even split between indoor multi-purpose recreational spaces as well as a town pool. So we are seeing that there is some desire out there for these things. This going across, so families with children, without children, which tend to be kind of opposite on some of the issues, are in agreement here that indoor rec space would be great. Under 250 prefer the town pool, but only slightly, so 35 to the higher earners at 250 or more, 38 would prefer the indoor rec space. Under 45, we see prefer the town pool, compared to the 45 or older crowd, which would prefer that indoor rec space. Alright, and then moving in, so to the areas that do have a little bit more consensus, so green space development. So if the town's development plan for the area includes a focus on developing green space, which of the following would you most like to see? And we can see a park or open space is really valued, as well as more walking trails, a community garden, less interest, and then we did see kind of a lower no response rate on this. I believe that's because people are interested in this natural space enhancement, you know, the green environment of the area. So kind of continuing on that same vibe with the pedestrian experience, which of the following do you think would most enhance your pedestrian experience in this area? So we see in the plurality became with improved sidewalks and walkways, 34% said landscape and trees, benches, better lighting, signage, lower. So it's really just this idea of making the pedestrian experience, the walkability of the area improving. So parking was another big issue that we included in this. And let's pull this up. So think about parking in this area. Which of the following do you think is currently the biggest issue? So interesting, we see a tie, basically the two pluralities being 31% for both, there's no issues with parking in the area. 31% also said traffic circulation is that biggest issue. I think what's interesting here is the amount of parking, only at 12%, doesn't really seem to be that much of an issue for people on top of their mind. So I think that's interesting in thinking about how we can use the space. There's not so much an issue of amount of parking right now, it's just more the circulation. And again, 31% don't think there really are issues with parking in the area at this
Well,
point.
we haven't given them an alternative to consider in terms of parking, right? If we were presenting some sort of plan for what we would do there, we might find that there was a different response in terms of the way people are thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you get more, I think, again, this was a general survey, and I think what we're seeing again with that question about commercial space and the fact that even 43% of those opposed, as you get specific plans, I think people like the idea of small shops, small retail things. Sometimes just the words commercial can sound big. Once you start getting specific plans, I think you'll see adjustment in the numbers. This really just gives you a good kind of general sense, I think, of where to focus potential development plans.
I think that came through in the comments for sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of comments, small local shops rather than large scale development, commercial chains. I
Yeah.
think that was what I read.
Yeah. And then, pretty much large consensus, no one really wants to see a parking structure developed in the area. I do say that, but again, you do have 1 in 5 who think it is a good idea, but we are seeing 76% here that just flat out said, no, I would not like to see a parking structure, and that goes across all of our key demographic groups that we took a look at.
But that question is really, even though it's incorporated into the questions, it's on an island. If you ask that, if I get you 48% of the people plus 35% of the people who want parking, more open space and more walking trails, to have that, plus you would have to have a parking structure as part of that equation, and that answer might change,
Yeah.
very much so.
Right.
Yeah, and we
On an
we
island
need
asking that
to-
question, who's gonna say, I wanna have a parking structure without, and then what?
But I think
Right.
it's valuable to know what the assessment of the current parking situation. I think the traffic circulation is something that I was kind of surprised to see quite high. I know there are a couple of times of the day where it's particularly challenging, morning and evening, but it's obviously top of mind to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, which I was surprised, because as soon, working at a college with students always parking in the faculty lot, I just assumed that it was gonna be the availability of parking that was gonna be the main issue, but the fact that circulation was so high, I think that definitely is interesting, that kind of issue is so top of mind for residents.
Well, I think, and we knew this going in, that the challenge of this is that we're asking these questions out of context. So I think what Jeremy's saying is going to be the next step in, in trying to determine what we can do. It's going to be putting these things in context. So if we see a need in a certain area, then we'll say, this is how the need can get met. Now,
What do you
what do you think about
Right.
these various factors? So
Right.
Yeah, there's a
I think
trade-off.
it's understood that, we have to start somewhere, and this is really good information.
Yep.
And we can, move on from here. So, but let's continue.
Yep.
And I think one of the other things that we see here too, as we're asking all of these different possible types of development, that the word development, as you pointed out at the beginning of this, everyone has a different picture of what that might be. And so I think what this survey provides is a little bit more of a sense as to what people are open to. And the fact that there needs to be even things that they're not necessarily open to, put in a context of the understanding that they want a certain look and feel to the town is going to change those kinds of
Right, I think that as we keep moving forward with this and we talk about development of walking trails and green spaces, people will understand the concept of development in a broader way than they have. Yeah, it's very much a learning experience for everyone.
So basically moving into some concerns. So we split up concerns between what are your main concerns regarding the development process itself, and then regarding basically post-development. So in terms of the development process itself, we can see that vast plurality, so almost 50%, but not quite, so 41%, biggest concern, increased traffic and congestion. So that I kind of think is the main thing, especially, we can see that, length of time came in second, but when we look at that second question of post-development, traffic and congestion again. So we really, I think, again, this is a survey, is a good jumping off point. So this is really a good guidance where you kind of know what's gonna be a headache and what's not gonna be a headache to get through for the most part. So in terms of the green space development, even some commercial development, so it's really kind of, this gives you the key indicators to kind of keep in mind for any decisions. And obviously, I don't think it's too big a surprise, but traffic and congestion is a main issue on the top of people's, both during and post development. And this, as we can see, across the board of the demographic groups is by far the number one response. Alright, so we did ask, and I mean, no giant surprises here. I feel like, how concerned are you over an increase in taxes in order to finance any development plans? We can see vast majority come in as either very concerned or concerned here, and this goes across demographic groups. Again, this is a general question. This, I think, once we have, or you guys have specific plans in mind, I keep going back to that question about commercial development, where I was just shocked to see almost half of people who oppose development did say, hey, I would like to see some more commercial small spaces here rather than no new businesses. So people are concerned over development plans. But again, as Barbara pointed out, development means a lot of different things to a lot of people. So as you kind of come up with specific plans using this that focus more on the areas that we do see consensus around, you'll see some movement in these numbers. And we did ask preferred method of financing in the area. We see public-private partnership came in at 47% compared to 32% who would prefer private investment, only 12% out of the town budget here. And public-private was the preferred method across the key demographic groups that we took a look at. Alright, so pretty much there is, again, a lot of data. This is a summary of the key findings. There's a lot of data in that banner packet, and again, as you're kind of diving through it, we're kind of happy to rerun different questions by question, develop profiles, but overall, the key points that we're kind of pulling out right now is that residents are more likely to support pretty much the plans that we've been talking about. Anything that's going to improve the pedestrian experience in the area, as well as enhance green spaces, the natural environment. That said, there's not this 90-10 split of people opposed to development. About half of residents or more believe that some form of green space, walkability, recreational, or commercial development is at least a mid-level priority. So, when we stay away from those extremes of just high priority or just low priority, and we kind of look at those people in the middle, there is more consensus around these issues. So I think I take this as, people aren't necessarily opposed to development, they just need to know specific plans and what they want to do, and then those levels will kind of adjust. But regardless, people are concerned over taxes. I think, there's no surprises there. There was really no difference in income. Basically, the under over 250 both cited either very concerned or concerned as the main kind of issue there. So really, anything that's done does kind of have to keep that in mind. That said, again, when we went back and took a look at things and really focused on the mid-levels also, there is a good amount of people out there who basically would like to see some form of development. Most of it has to do with kind of the natural environment and the pedestrian experience of the area, but we do see some potential for commercial development as well, as about half of people rated that as at least a mid-level priority. Alright, so anything that we can kind of dive in further or clarify for anyone at this point?
Did you see anything with the people who said that they would prefer the public-private partnership along the lines of what their attitudes towards housing were?
You can take a look at that.
Yeah, that's a good question. We can follow up with the split. We focused a lot on as well as those key demographic groups, the crosstab of support or oppose. So really to get the sense, there wasn't a ton of differences there, because again, we did a lot of questions didn't wanna give people an out. Some we did wanna provide unsure responses, or some we did wanna provide the option of no new businesses. But for things like the recreational space or the green space development, we wanted to make sure we were getting everyone's opinions there. So we just had everyone answer all those questions, but that's definitely a type of profile that we can develop for you and share that information.
And or if there's anything of otherwise of interest that you happen to observe in the folks who favored the public-private, I just think that could be insightful.
Yeah,
So just to summarize, I spent some time with all of this today and reviewing the comments, but quoting your executive summary, support for housing related development of this area is low. And you mentioned that in this day and age, a 50-50 split or somewhere in there is not surprising, but in this case, it was an overwhelming majority.
correct, yeah, basically housing, and I think the other super low one was like professional
Professional
space development.
Correct.
Is there's-
74% and 81%
Right.
against.
Yes, so that development overall, there is some interest there, but yes, housing, I think the data makes it very clear, no one's really looking for housing in this area.
Thank you.
But I think though, the next follow-up question is because it's not an island again, is what does that mean? If we said 250 units of housing, you might get everyone saying no. If you said 50, 40, 30 units of housing, plus commercial, plus green space, that conversation may completely change.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think 200 out of our 1679 responses put housing as a priority. So I think it's pretty overwhelming that the community is not interested in considering housing at all. And we have the data that suggests that what the community would consider, and this is again goes back to also the comments. The comments that I read, a lot of them were, I'd like to see some commercial development if it's small businesses, not large chains, not large scale development, and in line with some sort of green space. But I don't know that I extrapolate that there's like a connection with housing. I think it's pretty it's pretty obvious that the community does not want housing. And it's
I think you have to understand what that means, and I don't think we're at that point yet. And this is not to say that that's what's coming at all, but it's part of a larger question. Just like if you did have housing, people weren't looking for necessarily affordable housing because nobody, if you read this, again, from on an island, is saying, I wanna have, making up a number, 150 units of affordable housing as a block of affordable housing, but I believe that analysis would change if you said one out of every X number of units, whatever number there are, plus commercial, plus all the other things we discussed, but
well,
That's
page
the whole point
5
of
is
digesting this.
affordable, it breaks it down,
no, but you're
mixed
missing my,
use, affordable, condominiums,
no,
workforce.
but you're missing my point. You're being asked one question. So the question is, you want affordable housing? Sure, only 17% say that, but I bet you that number would change if it was 47% of those people who could get mixed use, one out of every 5, 6, 7 units was affordable housing, they would not object to that and have an issue with it. So they're not prioritizing as a block as this is what we need, this is what we want, but they're also not saying we don't want it at all, period, in any context.
Sure, I guess I don't know that I would prioritize housing as a goal or an objective for the future of the town based on the data that I have before me. I would probably look to small scale shops, maybe, green space, definitely, maybe some recreation space. I think it's almost a toss-up between recreation space and small scale commercial development, but I don't know that I would even consider housing as part of this based on the data that we have
I
before us.
think
My
housing
response
is a-
not even there yet, so
Yeah.
I think we're maybe getting a little bit,
so I don't think
yeah,
it's a
we're getting
conversation about
ahead
housing or not,
of
but-
where we. Yeah, I think I understand the points that everyone is trying to make. We're all looking at this from different perspectives. What we're trying to do now is just simply understand the results, and then we're going to have a lot of time to discuss it and come up with whatever conclusions that we think, but we're going to take the opportunity to be thoughtful about it. That's what, I said at the beginning and people have come in afterwards, but Jen, you haven't had an opportunity to say very much. Do you have any comments right now?
No, I actually am thinking about the traffic circulation data because that jumped out to you as significant, and it dovetails a little bit with what I heard over at Bell. With people around the tables qualitatively, they did talk about how hard it is to get through that space.
Right, and people have always talked about the traffic
Always
problems,
talked about
always,
that.
right.
As-
And-
that adds to or kind of dovetails with the pedestrian experience as well. I think the traffic circulation doesn't help that.
Yeah, so it does sort of make food for thought, you know, thinking about the green spaces and walkability that people are wanting and the traffic circulation issue. I mean, it just does get you thinking about the space and
For
the
sure.
uses.
Right.
And I would also add the parking lots fuller and fuller by the day as more and more businesses ask their employees to come back to work full-time. We have so many residents that are commuting into the city. Getting out of the parking lot after school is a nightmare, but getting out of the parking lot at 5:55 when a train rolls into town has also been really difficult. So I think there was a time when we thought maybe people wouldn't be going back to work 5 days a week, and that's certainly changed, so.
Just out of curiosity, is that something that you guys have looked at, I mean, outside of this study, but the commuting patterns, do you guys have any insight into that?
I'm sorry, into
Is
which kind of problem?
have you guys had any occasion?
Like the commuting
Oh,
patterns.
Yeah, I
which-
don't, I mean, I know you guys are, collect a lot of data and look into it, so I was just curious if you guys happen to have looked at any of the commuting patterns.
We have not in this area, but I think your observations are pretty accurate in terms of the transition that work has undergone over the last 5 years. And I think one thing that we do see in local communities is that when there is going to be plans for change, I think one of the couple of things that really come through here is that it's not so much about change as to what the type of change is, and to be very thoughtful about making any changes. In other words, they're interconnected. So your issue of traffic and congestion, that's what pops into people's minds when they think about large commercial establishments. When they think of, many housing units. So I think a thoughtful plan takes into consideration what really comes through in the survey, which is that people are open to change as long as the livability and the quality of life remains in this community.
I think that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah.
I think you're right about that. I just want to, Holly, do you have more questions?
Not right now.
Okay, so I just want to reiterate to everyone that the town board does not have a plan for this property. The goal of this project was to get community input. I just want to recap a little bit for people who just came in and just add a little something to the context of what we've done here. So this is a project that began last fall, or rather in September of 2023. And it was really before I became town supervisor, with the engagement of Pace Land Use Center and the plans for this follow-up survey. So in many ways, this was a project I inherited. At that time, there was the intention of doing a very quick 3-month turnaround for this project. And I very much felt that if we were going to do this, we needed to do a thorough process and real engagement. So at the time, we asked Pace to wait until the spring. And then we had a long lead up to launch the engagement sessions that took place in May of, I'm losing my years now, May 2024, right? So I just want to recap what we did for everyone very quickly. We had extensive in-person engagement sessions. We had walking tours, in-person and virtual. We had in-person work sessions at the Bell Middle School. We had pop-up kiosks at the farmers market. We had a dedicated website with the virtual walking tours, with a summary of each in-person engagement session, with opportunities for input on the website, and so that people could see everything that had happened thus far. And so it's the results from those sessions that informed the survey. So we have received these results for the first time, along with the public. I just want to stress that. So this was very much about listening for the town board and for us to ask questions to understand the results. And so we will not be coming to conclusions today or making announcements about action steps. And again, it's an opportunity for us to be thoughtful about what we've heard today. The board has had the opportunity to ask questions. We did agree that we would, our Maris consultants here very kindly agreed to take some questions from the public. I just want to again reiterate that this will be a brief Q&A on the results, not a drilling down on methodology and what we're going to do about this and what should transpire. So at this point, if the board has finished with their questions, I would invite anyone and to be brief. I mean, this is not an opportunity to go on for a very long time. So if anyone would have questions for the consultants, please feel free, you'd have to come up to the microphone, otherwise people won't hear you. And and state your name.
Grace is Harry for Lakeland. Question, there was two questions that came up that had answers. One was about housing and the other one was about traffic. When you do this survey in other communities, do you get kind of the same numbers back? 75% of the people don't want housing, a third of the people complain about the traffic? Or are those two responses or percentages unique to Newcastle? Or are they kind of typical of Westchester or this part of New York? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your question. I think that these are issues that do come up in communities where there is greater areas of clustered housing, where there are issues of congestion and traffic, also where there have not been development perhaps of roads and other ways of managing themselves, people around their communities. In other words, when there is a town center which everyone is really forced to go through in order to get to other major arteries. But generally, what we find in communities in other places can actually be the opposite. In other words, an interest in commercial development, an interest in further business development because of lack of jobs, because of not being closer to city centers and to areas where there's place of work. So we often do see this kind of trade-off between quality of life and what people think about the nature of their communities, but that does vary depending upon the needs, particularly the income and the options that those communities have in front of them. I don't know if that answers your question. It's kind of yes and no.
Right.
It's yes and no. I think it's very similar to communities in the Westchester area, but not necessarily in more rural communities or in communities that are closer to city centers.
Because it just seems like if you ask most people anywhere,
Well, we're
Okay,
not
forget
really
it.
good, yes,
I'll let it
but
go.
thank you for understanding. I think I got the gist of it. Okay, would anyone like to come on?
Hi, my name's Barrett Silver, I'm a town resident. I did participate in the Envision program and the walkthrough. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the town, the day set aside to walk around the town and look at the different sites, was how open-ended and open-minded the process seemed, that there was a real sense of discovery and that people were open to new ideas. And I noticed in some of the comments about the poll that there was a different tone. And I'm wondering if you feel like you might be able to learn any lessons about the difference that I came away with from the actual event and some of the comments that were a little bit more pointed from the way that it seemed like some people got the impression that you were leading in your question.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, and I got that a lot of phone calls also. I think people kind of took it as, hey, they're asking about development, that means they want to do development. Again, this was a survey where it was general. We wanted to gauge interest. You can't really gauge interest without asking the questions. And then part of it was, on some of the options, there wasn't really an out. There was I don't want indoor rec space development. Those questions of which did have, either unsure or no new business options and which questions didn't, that was all done methodologically. There are things, again, where we wanted to get people's opinions, whether or not they supported development. So again, yes, I heard that. And I actually had, a couple good conversations with people on the phone, and then when I kind of explained, well, we want to make sure we're talking to all people's opinions, they really got it. But when you're just filling out a paper survey or doing it online, that's why a lot of the interviewing that we do has live interviewers behind it to really kind of explain the point by it. So I did see those comments, but I think especially when I talked to people on the phone that they kind of understood, there really is no agenda behind it, but you can't really get any data unless you're asking the questions. So I think people kind of assumed, hey, if they're doing a survey, there must be, plans in motion. And then really, this was just a wide net to see what the community wanted.
If I might just add, I think that it also speaks to the broad intention that the board took in undertaking this research. There are few communities that actually start out with a walking tour and with open sessions. Very often, we need to combine both of those things in a survey that we do of the community. And so I think what you're seeing this time with this instrument is that not that we left it out, but rather that the town had done that initial research. And so when we were tasked with putting together a more structured questionnaire, which is what this is, it was based on the broader open-ended information and the work that the board had already done. And so I do understand that it felt more contrived, and it felt that we were trying to force answers, but that's because the wealth of information that the board had already collected then brought us to different decision points than what we would have had to do had they not done that. In other words, in many communities, it's actually quite a task to combine both of those things in one survey. And the board had already done the first part. So hopefully those folks who felt that they were not being able to express their opinion within the constraints of the questions that we asked were able to do so in other written ways, online, and also we asked people to reach out to us, and if they did call and wanted to expand upon their opinions, those are included in the comments that the board has been referencing, because we wanted to make sure that in fact we were not defining opinion, but trying to address the issue of what are the priorities and where can we go from here.
I think the gentleman raised a really good point, because the intention and what I felt was very exciting about the process was the open-endedness of it and the feeling of a community coming together for a shared vision. A vision that was inclusive and that was engaging and that was about real exploration about what we could do together. And so it was very much done with that intention and that feeling in mind. So you had a tough job to then follow up with drilling down, and all sorts of conspiracy theories ensued in some quarters, which, okay, I'm not gonna be that concerned about it. But I think that, you really put your finger on it when, there was a real difference between the two, and maybe it's just that it can't be helped. And it's just a statement, a testament to the fact that sometimes you can't replace in-person experiences with people. You can go online and get an impression, you can go on paper, get an impression, but sometimes in person is the way we need to interact with one another. So
Also,
anyway.
there's a difference between engaging in research that is qualitative versus quantitative. You know, with qualitative research, you really get to give a broad personal response. And in quantitative, you're pigeonholed.
You're drilling down.
You're
Exactly.
pigeonholed
Yeah.
and there's no avoiding it, it's just the nature of research, so.
Thank you for your participation.
I do wanna also just add that I took another look at the nature of the sample, and I think it's really impressive. I think you did an excellent job of trying to get as many different perspectives within the community as you could. I think that's reflected in this data, and on page 3 of the executive summary, state household income makes little difference in how residents feel about future development. So not only did we reach so many different demographics in the community, but across income levels too. So thank you.
It's good that we pinned that down, that we asked that so that we knew that we were getting a broad sampling.
Okay. Yes, welcome.
Laura Lenehan, Chappaqua resident. So much for your request not to focus on methodology.
Correct.
This was raised in the comments and I experienced this as well. Several options in a question, we could only choose one, rather than being able to rank them. So there's information lost there. The comment was made in the report that, I can't remember which one it was for, recreation, et cetera, it came out at 33%, and that was identified as the top choice. Well, town pool is at 32%, that's the same number. So, one of the challenges that's been alluded to is, how do you look at this data now and understand more than just what your table's showing? I do think it would have helped if we'd had ranked choice voting or something equivalent to that on some of these key questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Any questions? Okay. That does it. Is there anything else that you'd like to let us know about?
Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for having us here this evening.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you.
you.
Thank you for the
Thank you so
work
much.
that you did.
Yeah, and I can definitely follow up. I have a couple notes on basically no response profile as well as the public partner profile, so we'll definitely follow up in the coming weeks.
Okay, hang on now,
Yeah, that's great. If the public has additional questions or comments regarding the survey, they can submit them to envision@mynewcastle.com or mynewcastleny.gov. And I will collect them and the board and share them with the board, and we can post them and send whatever's relevant to Marist to respond to.
Right.
And
So
has
go
this
ahead and
already
make that
been
available.
posted to the town
No,
website?
not yet, it will be posted after tonight, it gets
Thank you.
presented to you and then
Thank
posted.
you, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And thank you as well for being willing to take questions from the public.
Of course, always, no,
Yeah,
always.
I just need
Thank you.
Okay. See.
Still in work session, just bring that where we can go to residents.
I'm sure we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch again.
Yep,
Thanks so much.
thank you.
Okay, thanks again.
Have a good night. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay, so before we move, what is going on?
Just cough drops.
Alright, so before we move on to our town board meeting, we have some administrative items to go over
I will try
in the
to,
work session.
there's quite a few of them, so bear with me. Okay, the first thing we've got is a number of retroactive payment of claims. Along with our monthly reports for November and December 2024 and adoption of minutes for November and December 2024.
We have an authorization to accept the cash bond agreement for 28-30 Fisher Lane. That's a cash bond agreement for mitigation plantings, that's to guarantee their success. We've got authorization to solicit bids for our senior nutrition contract. Part of our Meals on Wheels to our seniors. We go out every several years to take and secure a vendor for those services. The next is authorization to approve the 2025 annual radio equipment maintenance service agreement. That's with Goose Town, it's for Brace radios. It's for a fee of $4,260 annually. For this is to approve I think it's the 2025 annual installment for Nixle. That's the police emergency alert system. Next is authorization to share in CCSD painting services, a bid for town hall. It's awarded to HG Painting. It's in the amount of $23,649.
Jill, can you tell me a little bit about that,
Sure.
the painting for town hall? Because we've talked quite a bit about the work that needs to be done. We know things need to be done at town hall. So what's the painting?
The painting is removing the wallpaper that's coming down in sheets in the lobby and in the hallway.
I guess that needs to be done.
Yes,
Okay.
we've tried stapling it.
Trying to do as
we've tried
little as
bringing-
possible in case, we
just-
know work has to be done.
It's gotten to that point. The wallpaper was
Can we
put
make
up.
sure it's just minimal painting?
It is minimal painting. It's literally just ripping down the wallpaper that's coming down anywhere and priming and painting the hallway lobby. So basically out here and going down the steps.
And these are funds that have been included in the operating budget the last couple of years. We're kind of doing small minor repairs.
I know, I just, obviously,
this
no
is-
one is being wasteful, you guys are great, but
No,
I
no,
I have to
Yeah.
ask.
It's less than $24,000, but it is labor intensive and it's a big area. Slowly, but surely, we've been doing modest improvements to the bathrooms, regarding our staff. Next is authorization to approve the CPI. That would be the Northeast Consumer Index, which and disposal rate increases under our contract. This is for Sanipro. It's a 3.5% increase for 2025. Next is authorization of for final acceptance and the payments to Pepito Construction. It's for the fuel tank replacement project. It's the retainage that's going to be released based on the approval of the consultant engineer of the work that's been done, and also it's been in place for 6 months and it's been doing well. We have a 2-year maintenance bond agreement in addition to guarantee the work through 2026. So we're good to go on that. Next is authorization to purchase vacuum services for filter media removal of the Millwood Water Treatment Plant. This is part of the processes. I won't begin to explain it to you. I don't quite understand it myself, but I trust that the media filter has to be replaced, and this is a $12,400 expenditure. Next is authorization to award the bid for full service uniform purchasing for our DPW and Parks guys pursuant to the contract. They get uniforms. It's gonna be awarded to Goldfarb and Goldfarb for a general price of $7,075, but there are per unit items that are approved as well, and the department heads will take and make sure that the contract allocations of uniforms are distributed accordingly. Next is authorization to renew. Rob, do you wanna talk about these two for the board? The cap markets and OpenGov?
Sure. We're asking the board to renew our contract with Cap Markets Advisors. They're the town's financial advisors. When we do go out to bond, they help prepare the official statement and walk us through Moody's. On off years when we're not bonding, they prepare the continuing disclosure, which is a statement that we must provide to the bond companies. So they help us prepare that. They've been our financial advisor for many years. The next contract, we're looking for a renewal for the contract with OpenGov. That's our fiscal transparency portal that is part of the controller's page online. and they've offered us a 3-year renewal. This is the first year they've actually increased the price. We've been with them, I think 7 or 8 years,
Yeah.
probably maybe closer to 10. I think that was something Rob brought in, so we're just looking to renew that.
Great, thank you. Next is authorization for the town to consent to the appropriation of a parcel by New York State Department of Transportation. This is yet another piece of documentation that New York State DOT needs for our Millwood sidewalk. We're getting there. We're gonna run out of paperwork that's being required of us eventually, and we will get this done. Next we've got UMR MEPCO health insurance premium rates for 2025. It was a 12% increase over last year. It's 27.24 for a family plan. MVP was a 7.57% increase over last year, and that's a $3,513 fee for family coverage. We give options to our employees. They can select from either one of these. Authorization to establish a capital project and budget. This is for a roof restoration project down at the central garage at DPW. It's in the we're establishing the capital project for $106,690. The next is authorization to purchase 2 police vehicles at a cost of $122,812. We're very hopeful that the supply chain issues will be improving, and we will get police vehicles within the next year as opposed to next 3 years, which is what's been holding us up. We have a request for a change of chair in the LGBTQ plus committee. Diane Thayer is stepping down, and Jennifer Simon has agreed to take over. We thank her. Authorization to award I'm sorry, we're gonna table the next one. And last but not least, we've gotten a request for from the high school committee, one of their student committees, for a book drive March 3rd through the 14th. They'd just like to put a bin in our lobby to collect books. So, and that's the last of it. Is there any questions, any clarifications on any of the administrative items?
No, thank you, Jill. We're a little early, I guess. Well, we're certainly early for the announcement that we wanna make. We told people who wanted to be here, let it be 7:30. So when we start the town board meeting, well, we'll talk about that when we open the meeting. Is that it? Is that all you have
That's-
for the
that's the
work
extent of the work
session?
session,
Rob, do you have
yes.
anything?
No.
Alright, so may I have a motion to adjourn the work session and open up the town board meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we are now in our town board meeting. We have, I think we're going to go out of order in our agenda. Let's see, Jill, do you have any announcements to start?
I actually do. Whoops,
Okay.
sorry, I actually do. So we have a road closure, Hamilton Road this Thursday. There's a tree that we've been trying to take down before it comes down in a storm and takes out all the electricity on Hamilton Road. We have finally secured those services this Thursday, January 16th. We apologize, but its removal will severely impact residents on the road when the tree work's being done. Residents have been notified, as have our first responders and the school bus companies, and we apologize for the inconvenience. Our second half school taxes are due by January 31st. That's a Friday. If you are as opposed to your bank are responsible to pay your property taxes, the second half school payment is due by Friday the 31st. If you have any questions, please contact the tax office, 238-4773.
And people can post date it in order not to cut it close because of the really strict interest.
Yeah, so it is a 10% penalty when you are, I'm
Penalty.
gonna put it in quotes, 1 day late. Because the entire school tax bill is due on September 1st. You have a 30-day grace period for the first half and a 4-month grace period for the second half. The problem is that when you are a day late and you show up on February 1st, all of that interest accrues. So it's a 10% penalty, and yeah, It's very steep. And we have no discretion insofar as waiving it. So please, we do hold post-dated checks. If you are gonna mail your check at the post office, please make sure you see them affix the postmark. Don't just put it in the box. And we'll be reminding people, and we will be sending out an e-alert to the community, and there are reminder postcards going out as well. There's going to be no notary available at Town Hall for the next 2 weeks. We really apologize for the inconvenience. Notary services are available from the UPS stores in Pleasantville and Mount Kisco, and from Citibank in Mount Kisco as well. Also, your bank should provide that service to you. There are just a couple of standard things regarding, winter parking bans and winter parking rules that'll be in the e-newsletter. But I did just wanna mention in passing that we mourn the passing of Peter Levitt, former Newcastle Town Justice. Judge Levitt passed on December 13th, 2024. He was also a former Westchester County judge. He was a former captain of the Chappaqua Fire Department and a former member of CPAC. Good guy.
I'm sorry we missed the information for him prior to funeral services, but we extend our condolences to his family and we remember his service to our town.
I will include the link to the services page if you wanna reach out to the family or make a donation.
Okay. Is that it? Yes. Okay, thanks, Jill. Can we check if everyone is here for the grant announcement?
Yes.
Even though it's before 7:30, but we may be able to start.
We're all here.
You're all here, okay. Come on in. Welcome. Good to see everybody, please come in. We'll let everyone settle in. Okay, so we have a very exciting announcement, really unprecedented for our town. We have a TAP grant received by our town. It's a grant that is going through the DOT and from the Transportation Alternatives Program for our chap line in the incredible amount of $5 million. This is really a testament to the things that can happen when we foster great relationships with our representatives who are here today, and we are so grateful to all of you for your partnership and the support that you provided to us. I want to recognize our New York State Senator Pete Harckham, who is here today. Assemblyman Chris Burdick is on his way. I'm not sure if he's able to be here. He's in Albany, so we're hoping that he makes it. We have our chairman of the board of Westchester County Board of Legislators, Chairman Vedat Gashi, and his assistant Iris Lachaud. Good to see you, Iris. We want to thank, although they're not here, we want to thank our former county executive George Latimer and former deputy county executive Ken Jenkins, who is now county executive, for their really important support in this project. We are so appreciative of the New York State DOT, who's, I think, the regional project manager is here. I'm sorry, I don't have your name.
My name's Eric Markert. I'm
I have someone else's name and it's a woman's name, so I wasn't going to say that.
You probably have Orietta's name.
Yes, I do. And what is your name?
My name's Eric Markert. I work for
Eric
Orietta in local projects.
Right, so and everyone's gonna have a chance to come up and talk, but thank you so much to the DOT. We are truly appreciative. It's gonna be put to very good use. We thank the Teatown Lake Reservation for their strong support. Would that be okay? Here we are. What is your name, sir?
Bob Elliott.
Bob Elliott.
Bob Elliott, thank you to Bob Elliott for their support from T-Town. We thank the Audubon Society. We worked with Ann Swain, I believe they were not able to be here because they're on a Zoom meeting regarding bird sanctuary, so that makes sense. We are very grateful to the Chappaqua Central School District for their letters of support. We wanna thank Leigh Jones from Barton and LaJudas, okay, and thank you for coming, thank you for all the work you've done over the years and on the feasibility studies and the plans. Really appreciate it. And last but not least, I wanna give a huge thank you to Jill Shapiro, who has shepherded this project all along. Rob Zeri, who has been in the trenches with Jill. We wanna thank our Director of Planning, Sabrina Charmy, are truly amazing and you've really put in the work. We're very appreciative to Bob Cioli, our town engineer who has recently retired. Is Bob here? Okay, he's not able to make it, but we're grateful to also Josh Herman, our town assessor. Don't know if he's here, and Ike Cuzio, our Recreation and Parks Commissioner, and the Rec Commission for including this in the Recreation Master Plan, which was really very important. So this grant is really instrumental in creating a great pedestrian experience for our residents, for reducing our reliance on automobiles, reducing greenhouse gases. There's a safety feature as well, it's a path behind the high school that's now unmonitored, so we'll be able to monitor the path, put lighting and allow our track and field athletes to have a safe place to run. And it will provide really great educational opportunities with a bird sanctuary, which is now in the area that is inaccessible. The Audubon Society was very excited to partner with us to provide those educational opportunities. And it will connect our hamlets. I don't know if we've called the Chappaqua Crossing area a hamlet yet, but it certainly is a concentrated area of activity, let's put it that way. We have 91 townhomes, we have a Whole Foods, we have a big fitness center, and it's becoming quite active. We have a huge medical center. So it'll be great for the high school, for people going to Chappaqua Crossing to connect to the Chappaqua Hamlet all the way to the Metro North Station. So the project is, it's a $5 million grant, but it requires a 20% local match of $1.25 million. And 2 years ago, we had a CSC, a Climate Smart Communities grant of $500,000, which required a local match of 50%. So that's another
100%.
100% match.
You're right, yeah, sorry, 100%, which is another $500,000. So everything adds up to $7.25 million to dedicate to this project. So Jill, I'll let you correct or add to anything I'm saying, but the monies will cover a survey and the preliminary design and construction all the way to the halfway point. So it will start with a sidewalk right outside of the Ed Center of Horace Greeley High School, and it will continue down to the trailhead, will provide a parking lot. Our State Assemblyman Chris Burdick just arrived. Chris, we thank you and thank you. So the sidewalk will continue west, is it?
Oh, I am not
I will not
the
ask
person
you.
to ask directions.
It will continue.
It'll continue west to the trailhead
From the
and
administration building west to the
west to the trailhead and a
south.
parking lot, and then we'll continue obviously south to the Chappaqua Hamlet. So are there any other aspects that I didn't
To the bird
Didn't
sanctuary,
mention.
right, and that's it for right
Yeah.
now, that's,
If we should get to the other side of the bird sanctuary.
yeah.
we should get to the other side of the bird sanctuary. And I know that when we first heard about the project, the estimate was about $11 million, but now that we have 7.25, we've passed the halfway mark. And we hope to get further grants to help us finish this project, but we're past the wish the wishing stage and we're into the implementation. So this is a huge accomplishment. And I wanna thank our partners and give everyone who's here the opportunity to come and say a few words. And then we will have a picture op with the check. I invite anyone who'd like to come up and speak. Pete, would you like to? Welcome, the Senator Pete Harcum.
Good evening, Madam Supervisor, honorable board members. My job is easy. My job is to say congratulations. This is a really remarkable achievement, and it's not easy. These things are competitive grants, they're tough, so everybody in the town, your amazing town professional staff who worked on this, congratulations to all of you, and thanks to Assemblyman Burdick and County Legislator and Chair Vedad Gashi, to the Audubon Society, and to the T-Town Reservation. You started off your comments that it takes a partnership to get these things done, and a coalition that all of you built, and that's why this succeeded was the tone that you all set in the town in building this coalition. These grants, as you said, are designed to let's get cars off the road, but does some other things. Since COVID, people have been really thirsting to be in our green spaces. Whether it's the Adirondack Parks or the Catskills or our local parks, and you have a new green space, new bird sanctuary to give residents. And the other thing that people don't often realize when you hear about a footpath or a bike path actually improves property values. So it's an investment in the economic well-being of the residents along that area and the town in general and its future prosperity. So to everybody who is involved, this is a big win, and to all of you, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Pete.
I just wanna say, you have always been a tremendous friend, and for people who do not know, when CBAC needed new stretchers, you came through with dollars to help them for that. When the Millwood baseball field needed lights and really basically reseed and fix that field and get in a new playground, you came through for that. So you, Chris, Vedad, are really incredible advocates, and I know we've all worked with you one-on-one. You were always such a big piece to anything that happens here, and we're incredibly grateful.
Well, thank you for saying that, but that's why you pay us.
Chris, would you like to come?
Sure.
Welcome to our State Assemblyman, Chris Burdick.
Well, thank you very much for that warm welcome. And for me, this goes back to very shortly after I took my seat in the assembly. Because I remember talking about the project and I said, okay, well, what can we do to help? And they said, well, and I think it was Jill who explained this to me. Well, we have a problem. And that is that there's a piece of property that we need to swap in order to really make the trail work so that we don't, that it could be a continuous route. And so, but because parkland was involved, you needed to have state legislation. So Pete and I worked on that together. And, I mentioned it just to highlight all of the complexities that projects like these have. And there've gotta be 100 that you have encountered in the course of getting to where you are now. And the point of which is to show the tremendous perseverance of your town administrator, the town board and supervisor, because you just have to keep at it. And I was just learning that the third time is a charm for getting the grant for the vac truck. And I
That's
think
right.
you remember that when you first came in and I said, Vicky, just know that when you're dealing with the state, you might get turned down, but don't lose hope. Keep at it, and the perseverance really does pay off. And what I find remarkable is that, as I understand from Jill, that this first phase is already like something like a mile out of the 1.7. That's a big chunk. That's really good. So that, you're really off to a superstar. And I do want to say how I read with great for Jill. So sad for our community that I learned that you're retiring next month. And but this is
March.
Oh, in March. I'm
And-
sorry.
and
I don't
accounting.
rush you.
Don't rush her out the door.
No.
Don't rush her out the door.
April.
And also,
So-
end of March, not March.
Lock the doors.
March 28th and not sooner.
Maybe it'll be longer. Maybe this will get the discussion going. Anyhow, it just is one of so many of the accomplishments that without your work, it wouldn't have happened. There's just so many things. And, I echo Pete's point about how you have such a terrific staff. With your planning director and the perseverance of this board. And it really reflects on a great community because it doesn't happen unless you have the support of the community. So I echo the congratulations. You guys are just doing a fabulous job at it. And you can be assured that Pete and I are gonna continue to do whatever we can to be supporting you on this.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much,
much,
Chris. And I just want to reiterate that I'm so appreciative of the partnership we've been able to build in this very short period of time. And I want everyone to know that Chris, Burdick and Pete and Vedat and Ken Jenkins also coming in have been so helpful to us and so engaged, and I really appreciate our very strong relationship. And I hope it goes both ways, that we help you as well. And you've been really instrumental in that partnership. And at this point, I want to introduce our chair, our Board of Legislator Chair, Vedat Gashi. Welcome.
Thank you. Coming up third after they spoke, it's a little bit hard to come up with new stuff. And in front of Jill and Sabrina, I'm not gonna try to do numbers. Because they know better than I do.
Yeah, I fail as well.
I certainly would fail. But you mentioned it already. This is an example of what can happen when people work together. I'm privileged to be a small part of this. It's a state grant though, so we have to acknowledge that our state assemblyman and senator did a lot of the heavy lifting on the political side. And I'm thankful to them. Also, again, it's going down. The New York State Department of Transportation, DOT, this grant. It's great. I'm looking forward to being there for the groundbreaking and also walking it with my family. It's a wonderful time to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And would the representative from the DOT like to come up and say a few words?
I'm just here physically.
Your presence is very much appreciated.
I will say unofficially, we are.
You have to come
There
up.
you go.
You have to come up.
I'm really not supposed to provide comments. I will express the gratitude of DOT for being invited here, and we look forward to working with you on this job.
Thank you. So appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see, and can I have, how about our T-Town representative?
Bob Elliott.
That's Bob Elliott, yes.
I really wasn't planning on saying anything this evening, but T-Town is of course always enjoy a partnership with you all and the town of Newcastle, as well as offering our support anytime that we can on any of your projects that deal with open space and trails. But I also might add, I'm the county representative to the Hudson Valley Greenway, and I think this is a very fine addition to the trail system, not only in the county, but the whole Hudson Valley. So
Wonderful.
on top of
Glad you think so.
all of that, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Leigh Barton, would you like to come up and say a few words from our very instrumental in
Yeah, well again, congratulations to you all. I've been working with the town for over 5 years with the beginning of the feasibility study. So for me, I'm as excited as you all are to see this become a reality. I cannot wait to walk down it. Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
super
Thank you
excited
so
and
much.
congratulations to you all.
Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
hard work.
Are we missing anyone? No? Okay, we're gonna take a picture.
It's your moment.
Our moment, we're very excited to present the check
To ourselves.
here, and we will all come up and invite you to come and take a picture with us.
Do you wanna stand down here?
Yeah, we'll come down.
You help get it done. Yes, of course.
Hello.
I'm
glad you made it.
How you doing? Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Holly, nice to meet you.
How's it going?
I don't know if they like that.
Yeah, I know you guys like it.
Where do you want it? Let's get back against
We have
the thing, so we have some room.
No,
I was curious.
This is
Yeah.
amazing, this is amazing
All right.
here. Here we
Madam
are.
Supervisor, right in the
Madam
middle here.
Supervisor in the middle.
Center yourself.
Wait, let's wait for everybody here.
Yeah.
Come on in, come
Jill.
on in.
Get
Jill,
this,
yes,
Jill,
definitely Jill.
absolutely, come on, Jill.
Come on in.
Fit everybody?
Squeeze in, everybody turn sideways like barbershop quartet.
Who are we looking at first? Just the
I have
middle?
no idea.
Here, we'll start with Martin, we'll start on the right and we'll work our way left.
Okay, that's why he's our leader.
All right, Michael?
Okay. Good.
Iris? Okay.
Okay, we're good, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Great
For the
job.
record, we appreciate it, 'cause we can cash this check tomorrow too, because it says today.
Any day you can do
The gift that
it.
keeps on
Great
giving.
to see you. You
Thank
too,
you.
how if you need
I'm so
anything,
excited.
absolutely.
Well, listen,
All right, good to
Iris,
see you,
thank
be
you.
well. Take care, I'll walk out with you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm around this week.
I saw this on the calendar, like,
No,
I'm staffing this event.
No, it's not like he's not driving,
How much more do you guys have?
Don't tell Jay I moved the chauffeur. So I want to start it right now. No, good idea, 'cause I was thinking.
You guys have quite a bit more?
We have 4 public hearings.
Oh.
But not all.
We have 4?
That should not all be accurate.
Here, I moved this. We moved this.
You can't take that
But
with
we
you.
need for the public hearing for Mr. Lang's Way. Well, maybe he's in the wings or we can. Thanks for coming.
Bending it's easy for me.
Okay,
So John,
we have 4 public hearings, but we have public comment prior to that on the agenda. Hang on, Jill, before I get to public comments, I just wanna make sure we have Mr. Lang's Way as the first public hearing.
yes, Jonathan Taub is here this evening.
Yes, thank you for being here, Jonathan, but I was wondering, do we need Gray Williams here for, I thought we were going to have,
He was gonna join
I thought he
via
was going to
Zoom.
be here to
Yeah,
present
via-
because he's part of the process, so just wanna make sure that he is going to be here. Or
I
but we
communicated with
we
him.
could proceed if he's not, but I just wanted to make sure. So in the meantime, we are at the public comment period of our meeting. I'd like to invite anyone here who'd like to make a public comment on general business. Is there anyone online for public comment?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised and okay, we have one public comment. You have to come to the microphone and introduce yourself. You know, state your name and where you live.
My name is John Lucchese. I'm a Mount Pleasant resident. My cousin Nick Lucchese is part of the estate of Grace Mazzucchelli who was involved in the eminent domain discussion, which I know town supervisor, the attorney is familiar with. Has that been discussed at this meeting?
We're going to have a public hearing about it.
Okay,
so
so
you'll
shall
be
I
able
wait,
to-
reserve my comment?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, okay, thank you. Okay, being that there are no public comments at this time, I would like to open up the public hearing. I have a motion to open the public hearing on Mr. Lang's Way.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So we are looking at the honorary naming of Poyon Way to have an honorary name for Mr. Lang's Way. This is to honor Richard Lang, who passed away last March. Mr. Lang was a beloved member of our community. He was the owner of Little Lang's Deli up on King Street. And he has been missed terribly. Mr. Lang created such a sense of community in his store. People went there to meet, to talk to their neighbors, to order lunch. Our DPW guys still go there, people still go there, but Mr. Lang was such a presence in our town. He knew everyone, he remembered who you were, he remembered what you were doing, what your spouse was doing, what your kids were doing, and he asked about everyone's families. He was just such a beloved member of our town, and we miss him very much. And so we are happy to announce that we've gone through all the steps to have a ceremonial naming of Poyon Way in his name. His family have requested that it be named Mr. Lang's Way because people knew him as Mr. Lang. And we are very grateful to be able to do this, to recognize his contributions to our town. So at this point, part of the process was to have the town historian research the request because we wanted this to be a standard process by which all of these ceremonial street namings would go through. So our town historian Gray Williams did conduct that research and came back with his findings and his recommendation to go ahead with the street naming.
I do have.
Jill, is there anything you'd like to?
No, it's in the packet. I'm sorry that that Gray hasn't joined us this evening. I did reach out to him and he was going to be here. So but we do have his report. I can take and just incorporate it by reference. You know, into the public hearing. But leave it to say that he writes, Richard Lang was by nature outgoing and generous, and these qualities set the tone at Lang's Little Store and Deli Little Store. It has become an informal community meeting place, treasured as much for its friendly and welcoming atmosphere as for the quality of the food. Rich, or Richie as he was familiarly known, was also noted for his generosity to the community. He is fondly remembered, for example, by members of the fire department and the Department of Public Works for providing hot meals during winter storms when most other stores were closed. As his obituary put it, he would support a cause, lend a hand, or provide a meal without asking any questions and expecting no accolades. His motto was, if you need something, I'll help. And he recommends that since the little store is located right at the corner of Poyon Drive, it is particularly appropriate to keep Richard Lang's memory alive by honorarily naming the street Richard Lang Way. Mr. Lang's Way. I heartily recommend it.
Okay, thank you, Jill. At this time, would anyone like to come and make a comment? Yep. Yes, Jonathan, yes. And even though we know you, do
Yes.
identify yourself as usual. Thank you, and thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Taub, and I was asked by the Lang family to come and express the gratitude for the naming in Mr. Lang's memory. As I was driving over here, I couldn't get the Andy Griffith Show out of my head, which, based on the crowd behind me, everyone knows about the show. And the beauty of that show was that there was a center of town, and that was Floyd's Barbershop. Well, Lang's Little Store was the Floyd's Barbershop of Chappaqua, and it still is. And Mr. Lang was very different than Floyd in that he was the most caring, giving, honest, loving man that you could imagine, whether he knew you for a long time or you just came in for the first time. And everything that's been said by the historian, I know a couple of you have, are regulars there, a few of you, and having been part of that close circle, I can tell you that it's just overwhelming that the town has come to do this, because if there was ever anyone who deserved that sort of honor, it was Mr. Lang. And as close as I was, I never called him Rich or Richie. To me, like you said, he will always be Mr. Lang. And it was a tremendous loss for the town. And hopefully the memories that he gave to everyone who knew him, whether it be casually or not, will continue for the rest of their lives. And so on behalf of Mrs. Lang, Vicky, Heidi, Maddie, and her husband Dave, graciously want to thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan, for coming and speaking so eloquently. Really, this is one of the most meaningful things I think we can do, and I'm just really grateful to everyone for working on this. Okay, would anyone else like to come up and speak? Okay, is there anyone online?
No hands are raised.
Okay. So at this time, our hand is raised. Okay, welcome virtually, Frank Cooper. We can
Yes,
see,
hi.
we can see your hand raised. Yes, please, yes, you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Frank Cooper. I'm also an interested party on the property that John Lucchese was referencing.
No, I'm going to, excuse me, just a moment, I'm going to stop you. We are in a public hearing for an honorary street naming. The eminent domain is coming up next.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to suggest that we close the public hearing.
Could we leave it
Jill, do-
open for written comments through Friday?
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
great.
So we will close this public session and leave the record open for, I see someone coming up. Would you like to make a comment on
I'm
Mr.
not
Lang's way?
familiar with the process. And I came interested in the moratorium on the solar.
We're not there yet.
We have not opened that
I know,
public
I just
hearing.
wanted to make sure that it'll be possible for me to comment at that time.
It's on the agenda, so we will
Okay.
open that hearing and then you can make your comment. Okay, thank you. So I'd like to close the public hearing and leave the record open for written comments until this Friday. What is the date of this Friday?
19th
Friday, January 19th
at noon.
at noon. Okay.
17th. It's the
I'm
17th.
sorry, 17th.
Okay, we will leave the record open until Friday, January 17th at noon. And so may I have a motion and a second to do that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now may I have a motion to open the public hearing on the eminent domain proceedings for 230 Joan Corwin Way?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to start, Lena, would you like to start us off?
Sure, Madam Supervisor, members of the board, this is a public hearing requirement under the eminent domain procedure law under section 202. It's basically a public hearing to ascertain the public use as to why we are considering acquiring a portion of 220 and 230 Joan Corwin Way. This board had gone through this before, but we're doing it again. So the purpose of this public hearing is really just to talk about the public purpose, where the property that is located in terms of which property we're acquiring, whether there are any alternative sites, and basically the rationale as to why we're looking to acquire it. So without further ado, I know we have Bart Carey, Commissioner of our DPW, on virtually, so I'll turn it over to Bart just to go through that and just to talk about the property itself and why we're looking to acquire it for DPW. So Bart?
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello Bart, welcome.
Thank you. So the Department of Public Works requires additional garage facilities and storage space to store and maintain vehicles and equipment necessary for the proper maintenance of the town's roads and public spaces and public buildings. We've been looking at the availability of facilities for quite some time, and the subject property is located in between two existing town properties, the existing DPW garage and the parks recycling building. Unfortunately, there's really a limited number of industrial properties within the town, and none of them are within close proximity to the existing facilities. So with this property, again, it's in between the two existing facilities. It's in an industrial zone district. It's bordered by the Sawmill River Parkway and also the Metro North Railroad. The property that we would be acquiring would be the part that fronts on Joan Corwin Way. The existing lots have been redrawn so that the cell tower property would remain with the existing owners. There would be a driveway to access that property. And one of the big advantages to this building is that the height is much higher than our existing facilities. The garage doors would allow for modern trucks. Our existing facility, the truck bays have garage door heights that are only 10 foot 5 inches high. And this really restricts us in the trucks that we're able to purchase that we can store inside. Having the ability to store trucks inside improves our response time during adverse weather events and emergencies. Storing the equipment inside provides a substantial cost savings due to the increased lifespan of the vehicles. One of the other things we also looked at was the impacts of how acquiring this property would affect others on the street. And we see really no impacts because, again, it's an industrial zone. It's a piece of property that's located in between property that we already own. The cell tower site would remain in use and accessible from the same road that's currently there. We would require minimal modifications to the existing site. We'd be able to move equipment onto the property pretty much immediately. Inside of the facility would need some work. It was constructed in 2 stages, and the northern section of the building still has a dirt floor, so there would be some work required to take full advantage of the building. So in conclusion, the town is only seeking to acquire the portions of the property and facilities that it requires for its use by the DPW in storing its vehicles and equipment adjacent to existing facilities. There are no other suitable facilities available. The property and facilities to be acquired will be used in their entirety by the town, and there will be little to no impact associated with the acquisition and proposed use. And that sums up our needs and why we have identified this property as the best solution to fulfilling the needs of DPW.
Yeah, and just an overall comment, this type of purpose for acquiring property for DPW is pretty well known. I mean, this is done, it's been done in other jurisdictions in Westchester County. I was involved in a couple of them for DPW facilities. So again, it is legitimate public purpose, so I wanna thank Bart for including that presentation as part of this. So, without further ado, if the board has any questions of me or Bart with respect to his testimony.
Okay, yeah, thank you both. I just want to go over a few of the points that I think are also relevant and just want to confirm them with you and Bart. So it's my understanding the owner of the property willingly entered into negotiations for the sale of the property with the town. An appraisal was commissioned and came in at a certain amount. the property owner countered that appraisal with 6 times the amount of the appraised value. The town then offered slightly above the appraised value in good faith to resolve the transaction by sale rather than by eminent domain, simply to avoid delays and contentious process. But we are dealing with taxpayer dollars, and to offer much more than an appraised value is really not an acceptable thing for a town to do. So I just wanted to establish that bit of background so people can understand that the owner was willing to engage in these negotiations with the town. I know that the property is being leased now, it's in use, and it will be subdivided. The owner would keep the back of the property with cell towers and have a revenue stream, continue to have a revenue stream from that part of the property. So with eminent domain, there is a valuation process and the owner gets paid. And again, it was a negotiations process for the sale willingly entered into. Lino, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, that sums it up, Madam Supervisor. I will say again, when I came on board and started negotiating with counsel for the property owner, we were trying to do this in a way that would avoid eminent domain and as you indicated, to do this by way of sale. But it just so happened that, that those terms and conditions kept changing as we were going through that process. So at the end of it, we just thought best, look, we started this as the eminent domain route, so we just thought at this point, just continue that, and that's why we're doing this, kind of restarting the process and doing it all over. Again, it was contemplated that we were again, this is my predecessor, we were going to acquire this by way of sale, saving litigation, saving in terms of eminent domain, appraisal costs, all that have you. But again, we didn't get there, so that's why we're here and we are doing this public hearing, because ultimately what will next happen is, we'll publish these findings in terms of our public purpose, we'll provide this board with our report, and then ultimately we'll submit another offer to the property owner with the latest appraised value, which we have updated, and that will be provided in a letter forthcoming to the property owner with respect to this matter.
Okay, thank you, Lino. So at this time, I would like to invite anyone who'd like to make a comment. And please identify yourself and where you live.
Hi, I'm John Lucchese, I'm a Mount Pleasant resident. My cousin Nick Lucchese is one of the heirs to the family property, as is the gentleman who may speak, Frank Cooper. I wanted to know if first, did the supervisor and the board receive the letter from the family's attorney?
Sir, this is not going to be a Q&A. This is simply a public hearing and for public comment.
Okay, I'm sure you received the letter and we'd be very interested in basically hearing, I think you mentioned that the town is going to restart the eminent domain, and the family feels and our legal representation feels it is not a legitimate use of eminent domain. We also feel that it's unfair to cherry pick and take only the piece of the property that the town needs and leave essentially a lot which is non-conforming in the very back. So the fact that that line was drawn is something we're going to legally also fight. The family would like to just sell the property either in entirety to the town or to a private buyer. The fact that you are looking to use eminent domain to split the property is really disadvantaging the family considerably. The other aspect of the tax burden, the entire tax burden on the one side of the lot is $25,000 a year. I was told that by forcing the subdivision, it will trigger a reassessment of the back portion that the family would be left with, and that tax burden would be between $18,000 and $22,000, where it's about half the property being taken, half the property being left. So I think just as a matter of fairness, if eminent domain were to proceed, that the tax burden should be reconsidered and not shifted just to the entire back lot. That's another item. Furthermore, the part that the family would be left with is a very hilly area. There's no protection in terms of people or a truck, let's say cell tower truck going up there, rolling off and perhaps causing damage to life or property. So there's also consideration for what does the town intend to do if you did force an eminent domain claim. Would you also prevent provide some kind of barrier so that that lot up there could be more safely utilized. The town mentioned that you have significant cost savings by doing this. That's great. That's why, you know, all the more reason. I don't think the town can have it all its own way and then you have take the parts of the property that the town wants and leave part that you don't want. So our position would be make a fair offer based on a recent appraisal of the entire property. And if in fact a eminent domain claim was forced, reconsider and make part of the deal a very fair tax assessment for the remaining part of the property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just make one comment, just that briefly, so a lot of what this gentleman has said a lot of it goes to valuation. And again, as part of this, we'll still consider, obviously, if they wanna consider in terms of, once we give them the EDPL letter in terms of our offer, we're happy to reconsider and obviously talk about if they wanna go for a sale, but by law, in eminent domain, we only can take what we need. We can take no more, no less. We can't just say we're gonna take it all. We only take what we're required by law. That's what eminent domain is all about. We can't take just because we feel like taking it. You have to be specific in what we're acquiring. That's the first thing. And in terms of the public purpose, I know he mentioned it, but again, I've done a lot of eminent domain, and I know DPW and storage facilities and garages are legitimate public purposes. So that I'm not overly concerned about, but with respect to the letter, and I did receive the letter from Zelantis late this afternoon, much of what is stated in this letter really goes to valuation. And the property, just so the board is aware, and I'm sure you know, the topography itself is a steep slope, severe steep slope already. And again, there's a tenant there already, there's a cell tower there already that they're getting rental income from. So they are accessing the site right now, today as we speak. So again, all those things go into the appraised value of the property in terms of the topo. But I will say a lot of what was stated in Mrs. Zelantis' letter really are valuation issues. And just so the board is aware, it's really a bifurcated process. So you have the eminent domain, the taking, and then the valuation happens later if you can't agree on what that number is. So a lot of these points with the gentleman raised are valuation, and that's gonna be really an issue between our appraiser, their appraiser, and at some point we'll come up with a number, at some point, because by law, it's the Fifth Amendment, we have to provide just compensation for the taking of property, which we have to do. So again, I understand and appreciate what the speaker just said, but I know their counsel well and they're free to speak to me and we can resolve this by way other than eminent domain. Happy to entertain it, but at this point, we just haven't met in terms of some of the conditions that are being asked of us in terms of this process. So I just wanted to make the record know that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lino. Would anyone else like to come up for public comment?
May I make another comment?
Well, we'll let someone come up who hasn't spoken yet and then you can come back up. Just a moment, I just wanna ascertain if there's anyone in person at this point to make public comment? No,
I'll make some.
oh, okay, come on up. Please identify yourself and where you live.
Yeah, I'm Nick Lucchese, I live in Lee, Massachusetts. I just wanna say you're pretty fair about what you're doing, we're not playing hardball here. We just wanna sell the building, it's been going on 3 years right now, and we're paying money, taxes on that building right now, our inheritance. We wanna get rid of it. So if you can come up with a number between my uncle and you and work out something here, we're fine to work with you on this. But like I say, I want it done. This has been going on too long, and the lawyer's working with us, I don't know if you read the paperwork on that, but I think he's pretty much is ahead of the game here and stuff here, and we want out on it. Cause it's, my uncle's getting old, and it's hard for him to handle this in Florida, and we're done with it. So buy the building and help us out. Like I say, I know that building needs work and everything, and but realistically, if we were selling this building outright, that's an industrial property, it's worth a lot of money. And the eminent domain is actually cutting the cost on us on that, because we got a guy right now that's gonna offer us 1.7 million for that building, and we got a guy that wants to buy the tower. So can we kinda speed this up a little bit, and can work my uncle and everything there, and we'll try to get this going, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I'll reiterate, happy to work with their counsel, and again, I know her well, she's a good lawyer and we work well together, so I'm happy to work with them. And if we can, again, do this in a way that doesn't require eminent domain, I'm sure we'll all be glad to do that, and again, I'm happy to work with your counsel to do that, so.
Thank you, Lino. Would you like to come back before you go online? Would you like to make a brief comment?
Sure.
Come back, yeah.
Yes, two further points. With regard to the valuation or the lot in the rear, it must be, I think, ultimately a conforming lot. If the family intended to sell it, or do something separate if that's how it goes. So I would say that the town, I don't know that you can draw a line and decide that, the back property would not be a conforming lot, so I would ask you to look at that. And furthermore, the tax burden, as I mentioned, I understood that any forced subdivision would trigger a new assessment. Right now with the property, and I guess all properties in the town are assessed at 1978 values. And if the family, or if a subdivision was forced, that might trigger a 2025 assessment. So that wouldn't be fair for the town to kind of draw a line, force an eminent domain procedure, and then shift the tax burden to kind of an updated burden, whereas I think it could be part of the actual overall arrangement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments online?
One hand is raised.
Okay, can you please let them through? Yes, hello, can you please identify yourself and where you live? Hello, can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you. Yes, my name is Frank Cooper. I live in Richboro, Pennsylvania, but I'm an interested party of the estate. I just have a few comments that I would like to share regarding the building and the need for the building. Having seen a previous PowerPoint presentation, I believe prepared by Mr. Carey, has the township considered just raising the roof of the existing building? From what I have seen, it's a cinder block building, and that roof could be raised very easily at, I would perceive, a very minimal cost to accommodate the vehicles in question. So that's a standing question. I know this is not a Q&A, but I think it's a point that the township needs to consider along with its citizens. The other point I'd like to raise is I don't know that there's been a total cost of acquiring this building and making the improvements that are necessary that has been shared with the township citizens. In previous discussions, Mr. Carey had shared that one of his things was to wash these expensive vehicles in this new building. There is no water recovery system in that building, but yet other than having some costs shared regarding the acquisition of the building, I don't think the citizens have ever really been given a total cost of acquisition along with improvements. And I think that in fairness to the citizens, they should probably have that number so that they understand what their total cost of investment actually is.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
the extent of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else online for public comment?
No other hand.
Okay. Lino or Bart, are there any final comments that you would like to make? You don't have to, but.
What I would do, I would just close it for public comment, extend it, for the written comment period for this, with respect to this, because I know we have a report that Bart prepared, which make sure that's included in the record, so I would extend the public comment period just for the written comment to whatever the date you have, Jill.
Do you want it to be Friday the 17th as well, or do you want it later than that?
We can do the 17th, it's fine.
That's just this Friday?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine, okay.
Okay, we're not going to adjourn yet. Someone wants to come back and make another comment. Yeah, please come up.
And I believe Bart.
I just wanna talk to the gentleman over here, I just wanna know if I can get his card.
No, sure.
We'll get you some work. Excuse me, sir.
Give me 1 second.
I used to be a New Yorker, I live in Yonkers, so don't hate me, please.
No, of course not.
Massachusetts. Leominster.
Leominster, that's a little ways from Delaware, right?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Did Bart wanna say something?
Bart had something.
Bart, would you like to say something?
I just had a couple comments in response to the previous comments here. So in regards to the building, we haven't explored raising the old cinder block building because the fact is that we need additional space. So once we have a building with higher bays, we can put the larger trucks in there, and then we have smaller trucks that we could put into the existing cinder block building. So we need additional indoor storage space. That's the big thing that we need. Right now, we have indoor storage space to park about 6 winter plow trucks, and we have 22 winter plow trucks. So we really need additional space. And as far as washing the trucks, we do have an outside wash bay where we wash the trucks, so we would not be looking to do that in the building. I think probably what I was addressing in this former statement was that we lack the ability to wash them outside and then put them inside where they can dry. So right now, when the temperatures are sub-freezing, we delay washing the trucks that will be left outside, because if we wash them, they'll just turn into a block of ice and all the components will freeze up. So that's just in response to that. So we need additional space to put trucks inside. That's really what we need. And I appreciate the board's support on this. This is an ideal property, and it's in between 2 existing facilities, and I hope that this will work out sometime soon.
And Bart, was the maneuverability of the trucks, given the size, also an issue with respect to the current site?
I'm sorry.
I'm saying the town's current facilities aren't they tight in terms of maneuverability with respect to the current trucks that are there now?
Correct. Yeah, we are limited in space and maneuver, and we have some trucks that are parked very close to the Metro North railroad tracks, just to try to increase space on the site, and they come periodically and remind us not to put them so close to the railroad tracks. And, it makes it tight to maneuver.
Thank you, Bart.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you everyone for all your comments. And at this time, I'd like to.
Is there another hand up? Yeah.
Okay, I will take one last comment. I think I'm gonna then minimize people coming back and making multiple comments. Frank Cooper, I see your hand raised. Please make your follow-up comment.
Yes, thank you. Again, I just want to share a little of my background. Formerly, I was a vice president of procurement for a national maintenance company, of which I was overseeing a fleet of vehicles that totaled over 11,000 vehicles, of which approximately 500 of those vehicles were large snowplow type vehicles, similar to what the township would use. I would like to share that these vehicles plowed snow, spread salt, and after our use, these vehicles were not parked in a garage. They were left outside because these vehicles are all across the country in the snow zone, and it did not adversely affect their lifespan. Previously, I believe Mr. Carey had shared that having the facility, he could potentially expand the lifespan of these vehicles by 2 to 3 years. Again, having had over 500 of these vehicles, whether they were inside or outside, did not have any bearing on life of the equipment or its proper maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. All right. Any further follow-up? That Bart or Lena? No, we're closing the public comment. Bart, is there anything?
No more.
No, okay.
I have nothing else to add.
Okay, just giving you the opportunity. Okay, at this time, I would like to have a motion to close the public hearing and leave the record open until is Friday, the seventeenth. The 17th, until Friday, the 17th of January at noon.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, public hearing is now closed on eminent domain. May I have a motion to open the public hearing on the moratorium on battery energy storage systems?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just
Okay.
gonna see if I can get in touch with Gray.
Oh, yes, okay. Okay, so I know we have a lot of our staff here to make opening comments on this moratorium. Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can start.
Lena? Okay.
Sure. We're on this moratorium, what we're proposing here is on battery energy storage systems.
Yep.
So what we're looking at is a temporary moratorium so that we as the town can study, first of all, these systems and where we think these types of systems would be ideal from a zoning perspective to be located in town. I've done some work on these actually as an applicant's attorney for some of these storage facilities. And they do require a serious look in terms of where in town that, you know, these are proper. Cause I know for a fact that these units in these types of facilities have to be located near substations. So we as a town believe that a moratorium should be put in place to allow staff to study where these things would go, what kind of conditions we wanna put on them, whether we wanna see a special permit, conditions, which I've seen other communities do. So really, we're starting this process and we need some time and for me to work with planning and staff to see where ideally this type of, you know, use would be best suited in the town of Newcastle.
Okay, and I just wanna reiterate that we're not deciding whether or not we're going to allow these systems. This is for an opportunity to study the issue. And I just want to let people know that Westchester County is just developing a law to require notice of these BESS systems to the county Department of Emergency Services so that they can coordinate emergency response services. The fires are complex, they require specialized training and equipment, and so they want to know where our locations would be. So just to say that there's a lot of coordination and thought going on behind these processes at the county level as well. So I'd like to ask whether any of our fire chiefs or commissioners are here and would like to make any initial comments or
Good evening, everybody. This
Yeah.
is Paul Iden, the Chappaqua Fire Chief.
Yes, welcome.
Chief Santone expresses his regrets, but he's tied up with a commissioners meeting. In all due respect to council, I understand that, you know, his perspective of the moratorium is to kind of understand where one would place them in town. From a fire perspective, we really would like the moratorium to be put in place until the maturity of how we can fight these type of fires is better evolved. This is probably the most complex type of fire that firefighters can run into. At this point in time, one of the standard methods for fighting a lithium-ion battery that is in thermal runaway is to let it burn. And if you're dealing with a residential structure or a commercial structure that has some type of battery storage system, as well as a battery storage park, I'll call it, with multiple for storing energy off the grid, you're sitting back and letting it burn. The lithium-ion batteries, once they enter the state of thermal runaway, can burn underwater. You can put thousands and thousands of gallons of water on a Tesla that's on fire, and it won't put it out. They can actually burn underwater. And when you look into the fact that a typical house fire doubles in size every 30 seconds, when you've got thermal runaway and you've got these lithium-ion batteries that are deteriorating in sequence and they're creating a bigger and bigger fire, the mathematics of it is you're looking at a total loss for a residence. So I definitely would encourage the board to enact the moratorium and continue a dialogue with the fire marshal, the fire departments, so we can really come to an accommodation to figure out how are we going to address these types of fires. We have taken some preliminary steps with Mr. DePaul and Mr. Bancroft with even as far as notification on residences that have Tesla chargers inside. The legislation that the board passed a month or so back with regards to suppression blankets in multiple family residences that have e-chargers. So there's a lot of very positive progression on it. But again, we strongly would encourage that we put the moratorium in place, we continue the dialogue. At worst case scenario, we look to extend the moratorium as this becomes more and more mature.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, I just have a question, and you may not know the answer, but in addition to the severity of fighting the fires, do you know anything about the toxicity of the flame and the emissions that occur during a fire like that and the environmental impact and consequences?
Well, in addition to them being extremely violent fires, I encourage anyone to Google lithium-ion battery fires. And these BESS arrays are lithium-ion batteries organized in, if you picture a small brick, and each brick is a different array, as soon as one fails, it can trickle over into the next one. The hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and noxious gases that it emits are extremely hazardous to health. If one of these happens to enter thermal runway before the fire department gets there, the toxicity of the fumes for the residents or the occupants of the structure would be lethal. And just the speed and violence with which these little cells ignite and explode does not give you much time to react when it does enter the runway stage. If you Google lithium-ion battery fires, you'll see, I hate to say horrific, but a electric scooter in New York City, a bunch of teens enter an elevator. The elevator camera picks it up. You see the batteries enter a thermal runaway. No one survived that elevator ride. There's another one from Phoenix where dogs are hanging out in the house. One happens to be chewing on a small, single lithium-ion battery from a toy. Breaks through the seal of it, corrupts the battery, the house goes up in flames. So there's an awful lot of instances where the danger far exceeds the convention or the convenience. Years ago, these battery storage systems were run off your typical lead acid batteries, which are not environmentally friendly, but they're extremely stable when it comes to fire. With the advent of lithium-ion batteries, you end up with a greener footprint, but you also end up with a much more hazardous condition to the residents, the firefighters, and the environment when and if these things do go into runaway.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.
You know, just to the chief's point, this technology constantly is evolving. When I started working with them even like 3 or 4 years ago, even the structure of these BESS systems were different. I mean, some of them were like, they look like, you know, like a cargo, like a freight train in terms of a cargo train. And some of them were open inside, and if you look at those fires, some of them were those type of facility, you know, those types of BESS systems, and then they evolved to more like, you know, solid state where you open it up and you can't walk in it. They're all like separate individual, like the chief said, lithium-ion batteries stacked all in units where you can't go inside. So, but it's constantly changing. So, and to the chief's point, yes, and you know, there are issues with these. So again, when I say moratorium in terms of use, it also takes into account environmental. You have to look at all these issues, you know, when you're looking at this. So that's why when you look at other legislation around the county where BESS is allowed, there really are in industrial areas, not residential districts. Just, you know, what I can see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Yeah, and thank you, Chief. At this time, I'd like to invite anyone who'd like to make a public comment to come up to the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Barrett Silver. I'm a Chappaqua resident. I respect the fire chief's opinions, and I recognize that there are serious, legitimate concerns regarding the placement of battery energy storage systems, specifically because of the fire risks that are associated with them. And I don't want to downplay that risk. What I would like to mention is that, I mean, I'm holding a battery in my hand right now. So we have to make some distinctions between different levels of risk. And my only hope would be that rather than going straight to a moratorium, which I believe sends the wrong signal with respect to our hopes for the implementation of renewable energy technologies going forward in this town, and the reputation that the town has for encouraging green solutions. Rather than a moratorium, we look at the possibility of helping the fire department cooperate with other municipalities and jurisdictions in the area to come up with appropriate permitting guidelines so that when there are places that are appropriate for this technology, with specific safeguards in place to protect the residents of the town, that we can come to an understanding together where there's at least a potential path forward without sending a signal that it's just NIMBY land here and that we can't tolerate the ambiguity. Because I think that sends the wrong message. I'm not underplaying the risks here. I think they are serious. They need to be taken into consideration, and they can be lethal. So we should not ignore that fact. That would be irresponsible. But I don't think that a moratorium is necessarily the right direction to go. I think that we can come to a place where we understand the appropriateness of the technology and the places for it without basically throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to clarify the purpose of this moratorium. It's not to make a decision on whether we will allow these BESS systems or not. The purpose of the moratorium is to have a study period to examine all options, as the gentleman has just given an example of. We are not making a decision on these systems. This is a pause and a period to get information from our fire chiefs and from any relevant sources in order to make whatever conclusions we will make in the future. This is a study period. Okay, does anyone else have public comment?
We have a raised hand.
Well, we have someone in person first. We take we take in-person comments first, and then we'll take the raised hands online.
Hi, I'm Kent Thomas, co-chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board. So I'd like to respond to Paul Iden on a few things. First of all, his saying that we want to wait until we know everything about this technology and it's safe to fight all these fires and have an open-ended moratorium is not reasonable, okay? It really has to have ending dates. We've talked about 6 months here. I know in other town board meetings you already talked about extending it another 6 months. If there is such a problem with lithium-ion batteries and their garages and being installed just like power walls and that kind of stuff, people shouldn't even be parking their electric vehicles in the garages. There should be a law against that, which there's not because they're very safe, okay? Going back to when the sprinkler discussion happened, I'm gonna give you some statistics on fires in vehicles, okay? So the ones with the highest rate of fires are plug-in hybrids with 1,500 per 100,000 per year. Okay, the next is internal combustion, and those are rounded numbers, is 1,500 per 100,000 per year. Electric vehicles, 34 per 100,000 per year. They are extremely safe, okay? I'd also like to say, talking about the electric scooters and all of these things that have happened in New York City are very unfortunate and they're tragic and they're dramatic. But we're not talking about scooters. Scooters, all of these micromobility devices, scooters and bikes and that kind of stuff, it's different, okay? So they're removable battery packs. They're taking them, they're putting them in chargers that are probably not UL listed, they're not safe chargers, they're overcharging them, they're overloading the circuits that they're on, they may be damaged from when they were ridden as a bike or a scooter. It's not anywhere near the same thing, okay? These are stationary battery packs that are not going anywhere, they're not getting damaged, they're okay, and there's very little chance of problems happening. As far as lithium ion versus lead acid, it's energy density, it's how much energy you can put into that space. Lead acid batteries, it would take, rooms, it's like kind of like with computers, in the 60s, you needed a room to like add 2 and 2, and now, you've got phones that do so much more. Same kind of concept, it's density. And they've got new battery technology where the separation between the cells is much better and there's much more separation to try and prevent some of the thermal runaway. I'm not minimizing that there is a risk with them, there certainly is. When we get to the moratorium, it's a blanket moratorium, it's on all types of battery storage, okay? It's so we have, and I like to have, there's 2 tiers in what the moratorium, the way it says there. is 600 kilowatt hours and more and 600 and less. I think there's kind of three tiers. The more than 600 is the utility grade. From like 80, we'll say, we can debate what number it is, but like to 600, I would consider commercial. So it would be something that would be battery backup that could supply a commercial facility. And below that is really residential, okay? And so I see it as three. Now, if we look at statistics as far as residential battery fires from these types of systems, a German study done not too long ago said that there was 49 fires per million installations per year. Okay, they're quite safe. They really are. But let's get beyond that. I think that it would be beneficial. So residents use these battery systems for several things, but one of them is to store energy from like a solar system or something to use it later. Another is as a battery backup system, okay? So one of the things that's happening here is you're telling the person that they can't install in their residence a system that is, by all means, I mean, I just talked to Pete Harcum about it, he's talked to Pete McCart in this county. They all consider them systems to be safe, okay? But what you're doing by not allowing somebody to put in one of these, I won't say the brand, power walls, or something like that, is now you're forcing them, if they're gonna be using it as a battery backup, you're forcing them to use some fossil fuel solution. So they're gonna have to put in propane or natural gas or some kind of diesel or some kind of other fuel source, okay? Those fuel sources are actually more dangerous than the batteries that would be in these power walls that would go into the garages. There's more, the higher incidence of rates of fire with those than there is the power walls. So I see it as something that really, before you put the moratorium on, I think you need to know the data and the statistics as to why you're doing it. Okay, so I don't think that we put the moratorium on and then find out whether it was reasonable to do it or not. With the smaller scale, they are proven to be safe. I think you go after the larger scale. I agree with that totally. Research them, figure out how to fight the fires. You know, so on the utility scale and the commercial scale, by all means, put a moratorium on it. But I don't think that the power walls and the kinds of devices that are being put into garages or into houses need to have that done to them. Now, there's another way of approaching it is you could, so let's say the 80 kilowatt hour, you can pick a different number. If you want to make it lower, if you want to make it 40 kilowatt hours, for now, that's fine. You want to do some accommodation. You want to make it so that they are put on an exterior wall, not a wall that abuts a living surface or something like that. There's got to be some kind of discussion as to how this can be done in a reasonable manner. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanna add, I think we are talking about a more larger scale battery storage,
Well, I wanna understand that based on the numbers.
but
that-
there is
that
more
counts.
risk with more batteries in one place. And I think the chief's point, what I got out of it was the catastrophe of a small scale fire associated with a scooter. Imagine a larger scale battery storage facility. This is a matter of public safety, and we need our police and our firefighters to understand what they're dealing with before we agree.
Right, at this point, I just want to understand the factual basis that we're working on.
Which is why we have issued the moratorium.
My question is, Lino, so my impression is that this pertains to commercial BESS systems.
Primarily correct, yes. That's the idea. We're looking at,
Right.
you know, large scale, on an acre or more, 20 megawatt facilities. I mean, the ones that I've been working with are that type of facility. Man, yes, I know you have also in here as well that
There is no limitation or.
it is, yeah, you are correct. It also captures those as well. So, but again, you're looking at it from a whole scale. So this is very similar to moratoriums that have been acted elsewhere that we've done in Westchester County. Cause again, you don't have anything in your code that addresses it now. So we really need to take a look at this and figure out, you know, what works for Newcastle. That's why we're asking for the 6-month moratorium,
Okay.
which goes along like that.
I just wanna get the factual basis here. We're not
Yeah.
going to discuss, you know, we're gonna have the public hearing and then we'll discuss what we're gonna do.
Could I ask just a factual question?
Of course, yeah.
There are permits that are required for this at the moment, for any of these, right?
In terms of building permits, or any site plan approval. There's nothing in our code that addresses this at all.
Okay, so if
Right.
somebody is installing
why-
a
Nothing.
power
we
wall,
have the
there is no
moratorium.
anything.
Which is
Nothing.
why we
don't know
know
where-
where
okay.
we're in.
Correct.
Okay,
Right, that's right.
We need to know what we're dealing with.
Okay, is there, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily a factual statement, just more of an opinion statement. I think Ken, what you said, it seems reasonable on its face. No reason to doubt what you're saying is inaccurate, similar to what Chief is saying. I think a 6-month moratorium is reasonable to figure that out. As opposed to stripping people this ability away in perpetuity, 6 months to understand is not, for lack of a better term, the end of the world. When what you're saying may be very accurate and right and an avenue to be much more green. But I'd rather know now than get hit with it later on. And one other comment I would make is even if we'll call it the natural gas fires, the fossil fuel fires are far more typical or often. And what I'm getting from the chief is they don't have the magnitude in a catastrophic sense when they do happen. So yes, frequency, but doesn't necessarily equate to, we'll call it quality. That's not the right term I'm looking for, but you get my point. So I think what you're saying is very fair. We need to investigate that, but 6 months also to me seems reasonable in light of the big picture, because the town is, I think, overall fairly green, if not generally speaking, always as green as best we can be to try to push those agendas forward.
Right, but you are forcing people into
Even-
fossil fuel
Even
back.
temporarily, even
Which
I get
the
that.
life expectancy, lifespan would be 25 years on those. So they're gonna run, when they need them, they're going to use them for their backup, but they run every week also as to charge the battery and to run through a check and that kind of stuff. So you have quite a bit of greenhouse gas emissions that are
Okay, right, okay. Anyone else like to make a comment? Anyone else in person? No? Okay, anyone online would like to make a comment?
I'm sorry, just real quick, if I could just clarify a couple of points. The speaker who spoke after me had, suggested that the fire chiefs work with the other municipalities and other fire departments. Westchester County Association of Fire Chiefs, New York State Association of Fire Chiefs, the Mount Pleasant Fire Chiefs Association, we meet regularly. As a matter of fact, tomorrow night, the Westchester County Chiefs Association is meeting to discuss lithium-ion batteries, BEST systems, containment and fires. Westchester County Department of Emergency Services Hazardous Materials Team is on call if there is a fire there in Valhalla. By the time the team assembles to come, to your point, fossil fuel fires are much easier to fight because you can either turn the propane off, you can't turn off a lithium-ion battery that's in runway. You can take the heat out of a fire from a normal fossil fuel, and what are the 4 things that are needed for a fire? You remove any 4 of those, whether it's oxygen, whether it's the combustible material, whether it's a chain reaction, or whether it's heat, you put the fire out. You cannot do that with lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries, as they are built, are safe until they're damaged in transit, until somebody backing out of their garage cuts the wheel too hard and all of a sudden they've scraped up against it. You may not recognize that you've corrupted a battery inside the power wall until it catches fire. I'm not asking for an open-ended moratorium, as board member Salon had said. The 6 months, let's continue the conversation. The chiefs, between myself and Chief Stantone, Chief Rodriguez, and Millwood, we can continue to share with the board advances that have been made in combating these fires and how we can actually go about putting the fires out. My personal opinion, one fire that destroys someone's home is one fire too many. And we're not forcing people to turn to fossil fuels. We're just asking them to continue using fossil fuels or whatever they're currently using until the moratorium and policy has been established and we know how we can safely address the situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anyone else online?
No hands are raised.
Okay. So I would like to keep this public hearing open, I think.
To the 20th.
Right, so we are not going to adjourn, we're going to keep the public hearing open
Just a motion to
through
continue it to
continue
January.
on January 28th.
Yes.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to open the moratorium on the solar array systems.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Lino, do you wanna get us started on
Sure,
this one?
a little different, but in the same vein with respect to solar, what we're proposing is also a 6-month moratorium regarding freestanding, ground mounted and large scale solar arrays. You know, we do have legislation in our zoning code that talks about solar, but what we're looking at here is further, studying this in terms of when it comes to, we have a large scale solar collection system that's defined in our zoning code right now as property consisting of 10 acres or more. So we're looking at further studying that to see, what would be proper location zoning wise, things of special permit, maybe, conditions that can be imposed on these types of large scale solar facilities. So that's why we're asking for proposed moratorium, again, 6 months to study this, particularly as it pertains to what currently defines our code as freestanding, ground mounted or large scale. This will not include, rooftop solar, that's still permitted under our code, that requires a building permit. That's not affected by this, so like I'll call small scale, but this is really addressing those two types of solar types of facilities in our code, again, ground mounted and large scale. So I didn't know if anyone wanted to add.
Could you give me an example of what the freestanding and ground mounted collectors mean? I can picture the second one quite easily, I'm having trouble with the first.
So if, for example, it's defined as a pole mounted solar energy systems, freestanding. So it could be, you're thinking probably a solar farm that has an array of solar panels, but you can have one of those solar panels freestanding, we're gonna handle that at a single location. So that's would be an example, so instead of like a solar farm, we have multiple, it would be like a freestanding structure on a piece of property.
Would it include, say, a electronic sign that has a panel on the top of it that powers the sign?
You mean just a sign or a solar panel? Like
Like,
the sign itself wouldn't necessarily.
No, say the sign needs power and it has a solar collector at the top of it. I think they're at the school, but I could be wrong. I'm trying to picture what it is.
Yeah,
Is something like that part of?
That would technically fall under, I don't know what the school has, but if it's a unit with a solar panel attached to it that's mounted to the ground, that would technically fall under our definition.
Okay, so there's no like size requirement, does
Right.
not, okay.
Whether it's mobile or not, does it make a difference?
It basically says it's affixed to a structure, so whether it's probably mobile would not count, it's not a permanent structure.
So we have like stop signs, walk signs.
Crosswalks.
The crosswalks, thank you, past my bedtime. They actually have, they're not hardwired, we've got solar panels, the ones I can think of by Lang's Little Store. Because it's an open area, so we didn't hardwire them, they have solar
Those are on a town right away, or any.
They're actually in the DOT right away.
But there are signs, or there.
There are signs,
So technically, these are really looking at like single family properties, whether in residential districts that have like a solar mounted, not a roof panel, perhaps like a ground mounted facility, right? I don't think it would include that sign, that's the way I'm reading this, I don't know if it would include that.
I just wanna make sure that this is not too broad because and I'll wait to hear from other people, maybe, I don't know if Dennis wants to make a statement, but my understanding is the issues we're dealing with are, use of land so that we can plan and the issue of clear cutting of trees on
Right, well,
large areas of land.
large scale would be part of that.
So the solar panels that Holly asked about and that Jill mentioned don't seem to fall into that category. So I'm wondering if the moratorium is too broadly written for now. I mean, this is part of the process. So
Before you answer that, just to follow up on this question, if someone wanted to clear cut 5-10 acres of land to put this down, there would be permit requirements
You
regardless.
need a permit, you need site plan approval,
So
you need.
are we creating an issue when one doesn't exist on that front? If you're going to still have to get that permit, could we not deny it because of our concern about the solar we can only deny it because of its impact on the environment in terms of clear cutting itself?
Are you talking about the large, because again, if you're talking about something like that, that's already in our code, we have provisions where you're required to obtain approval for a human clear cut.
Correct.
So that's already there.
Right.
Right, but now we're going a step further, particularly again, this is really focused on large scale in terms of how we gonna regulate further these large scale solar arrays that do require more clear cutting, that may require more study, more.
But my point is, couldn't we just deny that application based on, we'll use the term clear cutting, regardless of whether or not we have a new statute?
No, we don't have that right now currently.
I guess the answer is no.
Yeah,
Answer's no.
we don't have
Yeah.
regulations to deny applications based on clear cutting.
Right, we should look into
So-
that separately.
Hence the moratorium.
Right, and then there's other aspects of large scale solar that need to be considered in the context of a neighborhood. That the current regulations don't address it to the level of detail that we think we need to address for our community. So the pause is so we can examine those characteristics, both environmental and neighborhood zoning character, to help us.
I'm gonna ask the question then, so if I have 5 acres and I have an acre of empty land next to my house that abuts my neighbor's property, so they can see it, is there anything now that would stop me on my acre of property to put up solar panels?
You would go through a very lengthy site plan review process
And
with
seeker.
planning board and seeker process.
Which you would do whether or not we have a moratorium.
Correct.
No, if you have a moratorium.
If you have a
then-
moratorium.
Well, sorry, I should not say that. I
Correct,
said
and
that.
so there are benefits to re-examining the law and creating the specificity by studying what we intend to study so that you don't spend that much time before a planning board, so that there's already built into the process the information that we need and how we can shape the location of the large scale solar arrays to lessen the impact on your neighbors.
Yeah, to give you an example,
Do we have
some
any
other.
applications right now for that?
We do not have any submitted applications at this time.
Yeah, and to Sabrina's point, like other legislation, other communities, they do have this by way of special permit where when you have a large scale solar array that does come before the planning board, there are certain conditions that they could put upon that solar array to minimize impacts to neighbors, glare, things of that nature, so we don't have that currently in our code. So we're looking to, maybe it's a special permit, maybe it's not, again, we need to look at
Understood.
those types of options.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to make an introductory statement? Dennis, I don't know if you're here for, to answer questions or if there's anything you'd like to say before we take public comments? No? Okay. All right. You can chime in anytime. All right. So at this point, we'll take public comments.
Thank you again for the opportunity to make public comment.
You look familiar.
I'm still Barrett Silver and I
Welcome back.
still live in the town of Newcastle. And I feel especially qualified to speak on this topic because I have been in the solar industry for 20 years now. And so I have some understanding of these issues and I respect the concerns that underlie them because I think they are legitimate. I want to put a full stop there. I work specifically in what I would call distributed generation, which focuses primarily on rooftop solar. I do want to make some definitions clear to everyone so that I think they would be helpful for this conversation. There are essentially 3 categories of solar installations that are recognized in the general industry. On the small end, there's the residential size. Typically anywhere from a few kilowatts up to 10 or 15 kilowatts, primarily found on rooftops, although sometimes also found in freestanding backyard type installations, which we call small scale residential ground mounts. Okay. Then there's the C&I scale. C&I stands for commercial and industrial. It's usually 50 kilowatts up to 500 kilowatts, something in that range, although there's some blurring of the boundaries on either end of the scale. And then above that is considered usually a megawatt or more is considered utility scale. Sometimes they say 5 megawatts or more is utility scale. I think there would be probably very little objection to a unanimous concern here that there's probably not too many sites in the town of Newcastle where utility scale solar would be appropriate. But if there were an application for utility scale solar in the town of Newcastle, I suspect that there would already be in the permitting process sufficient guardrails to stop it. If that's not the case, then bad on us, because there should be, right? And I think that's probably the main purpose behind the idea for this moratorium. We do need to have appropriate guardrails in place to avoid inappropriate sightings of utility scale solar in this town. I don't think that should even be controversial. But the way that the language in this moratorium is written, I think you've already touched on a few points. It's not specific enough to distinguish between the sizes of these types of installations. You're lumping together residential ground mounts with utility scale installations. I don't think that's especially appropriate. And I think that it kind of undermines the intention that's behind this moratorium, which I'm not against, by the way. I think you do want to encourage the appropriate use of solar technology by putting the guardrails in place so that you don't have these outlandish installations that no one could have possibly foreseen because they didn't have any plans for how to keep them out of the town. I think that's reasonable and appropriate. But what we do need to put in place here are exactly the kind of permitting requirements that take into account those concerns. Shame on us if we don't have them. It is time to put them in place. Yet, does that mean that we need to be using the M word every time we get a little bent out of shape? I think again that that sends the wrong signal here. Maybe we haven't done our homework as a town. Maybe we haven't put all the guardrails in place that we need. Okay, that's fine. We can admit that and go forward and put those rules in the permitting process. Most municipalities have already done so. Some of them have actually adopted the uniform permitting standards, which I would encourage you to consider. But that's not the point here. The point is that there are appropriate guardrails that can be put in place without sending up a, smoke signal that we're scared to death of solar. We shouldn't be. It's a safe technology. There's a huge distinction between battery energy storage systems, which do obviously have serious fire risks associated with them, and the mature technology of photovoltaic solar technology. So we need to be making those clear distinctions so that we can make the planning that the town needs that doesn't stop people from building even appropriate small-scale ground mounts in their backyard where no one else can see them. I don't think that that should be something that we should be, running around with our hair on fire if we have any hair.
Okay, thank you very much, we understand.
Okay, and so I would state that the moratorium needs to be at least reconsidered, if not completely rewritten.
Okay, thank you very much, okay. Please come up.
Laura Lenehan, town resident. I guess this is a combination question and comment. The draft moratorium alludes to property owners. There's no reference to the town. And there's concern raised about the environmental impact of potential installations. Does this apply to solar canopy arrays in public parking lots?
Is this a question?
Yes. I stated it interrogatively.
Yeah, I understand. I'm clarifying because we did say this is not a Q&A. Lino, do you wanna answer?
Sure, I mean, generally, the town.
Well, then I'll make a comment.
Sure.
That I would propose that the moratorium draft be modified, maybe even moratorium taken out, but the draft be modified to exclude solar canopy arrays on large public lots such as the train station
You mean
parking lot.
include, you wanna include it in the moratorium?
No, exclude it.
So that
Yeah,
the
so that-
town,
Yeah, so towns are not subject to their own zoning, so to your point, they wouldn't be subject to that, so just.
So the answer to my question is no.
Correct.
So
So therefore, we do have a Q&A.
yes, so my comment is the meeting, part of the meeting that I started with was the review of the Marist poll of the Envision initiative and the note that there was clear majority disapproval of modification of the town parking lot, in particular the construction of a parking garage. And so I would submit that it's very likely that we are going to continue to have a very large, many acre bare asphalt parking lot for the foreseeable future. And therefore I would propose that planning be initiated to create solar panel canopy installations, generate electricity, obviously, keep the cars cool during the hot weather, and prevent a lot of very unpleasant heat loss into the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up and make a public comment? No? Okay.
I'm just gonna I'll make one comment. Just one thing I'd like.
Kent, you still have to identify yourself.
Okay, I'm
This
Ken
is
Thomas,
another
Ken
public
Thomas,
hearing.
co-chair of the Sustainability Advisory Board. I would just like the wording taken out about the safety concerns that it's put into the moratorium, because solar is safe. There's nothing's really gonna happen to it. If you got statistics for solar fires, 14 in 1 million in 1 year on average. So I think that I hate to use the term, but I think it's kind of fear mongering a little bit by having that in there, and I think those words should be removed. This is more a zoning issue and a siting issue than it is anything else. It's not a technology issue. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Kent. Alright. Is there anyone online who'd like to make a public comment? No hands are
So
raised.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I've just been told that Dennis was having trouble, so he's on the phone, so if you wanted him to speak about, you know, the tree impacts
Okay.
of solar, he's Dennis, you're
Yes,
with us?
Dennis, can you speak now? Hi Dennis, if you'd like to make a comment, please let us know. Unmute yourself if you can.
*6.
Okay, we can hear you. Great.
Go ahead, Dennis.
You just got muted again. I don't know if you did it yourself or I don't think we're doing it.
Ken, what's the statistics how often Zoom doesn't work?
Okay, wait.
What is Dennis?
Dennis.
That's not fair, he can't defend himself.
We can hear you, but your sound is a little blurry, so if you could make an extra effort to talk clearly, that would be helpful.
Sure.
I don't know if are you on your phone?
Yes, I got some camera issue here with the with this camera and the laptop computer. So I just know that you had mentioned my name before, and I was just trying to respond. And I think just the comment was from my perspective, the pre-applications, I'll call them, you know, because there've been no formal applications, but a lot of the discussions that have gravitated towards me are, you know, we're property owners that, you know, I know at the end of the day, maybe you're not supposed to regulate intent, but you can tell, you know, when you have property that's steep slope forest and everybody feels that I can't use it, there's nothing I can do with it, it doesn't serve a purpose. It was almost like a knee jerk to, consider, oh, well, we could just, use this for solar and cut trees and et cetera, and, it's, and Tom will know more than me about this, it's more than just, putting in solar arrays. I mean, you need to now start thinking about roadways, you need to start thinking about fire access, you need to start thinking about putting in stormwater, it's like every other development application, so you just wanna have that balance, which, obviously, solar and renewable energy is a good thing, but, there's no such thing as a free lunch, so I think that, this opportunity, to consider that as part of the, moratorium process and what's evaluated, I don't see a downside to that. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Tom, is there anything you'd like to add?
Good evening, board. We would just like to take this pause, seeing how our neighboring towns are dealing with some of the installations that have been put in, some of the installations that are proposed, and how they affect the environment, the clear cutting of trees, the stormwater, the requirements for water mains to be brought across, the water usage, the access roads. We'd just like to take the time to put the legislation in correctly so that when it does come in front of the town, we have a clear path to guide the applicant and the owners and protect the town as well. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, Tom. Okay, so at this time, I'd like to have a motion to continue the public hearing through until to January, is it 20th or 28th?
Moved, sorry.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And so that does it for our 4 public hearings. Okay, Jill, do you wanna go over the consent agenda?
Thank you.
Thanks, Sabrina. Thank you, Dennis and Tom.
Right, thank you everyone who attended and
Thank you.
commented.
Thank you.
I do have a very important question. Is 4 public hearings a record?
I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
For this board it is.
Yes, I don't think so.
Right, I
Don't get too impressed this
I'm
time.
not going with Guinness.
I wasn't gonna get impressed, so.
What's your record then, Jeremy?
I don't know, PTSD?
Okay,
not ask
so
certain
our consent agenda, we've got adoption of monthly reports for November and December of 2020. November and December, right, 2024, adoption of minutes also in November and December 2024. We've got the authorization to accept the cash bond agreement for 2830 Fisher Lane, authorization to solicit bids for senior nutrition contract, authorization to approve the 2025 annual radio equipment maintenance service contract with Goostown, authorization to approve the 2025 annual installment Nixle, authorization to share CCSD painting services bid for Town Hall with HG Painting, authorization to approve CPI and disposal rate increases. This is for SanaPro, the Municipal Solid Waste and Recycling Services, authorization to accept final acceptance and payment to Pito Construction for the fuel oil replacement project, authorization to purchase vacuum services for the filter media's removal for the Millwood Water Treatment Plant, authorization to award bid for the full service uniform purchasing, authorization to renew contract with Capital Media Advisors, authorization to renew the contract with OpenGov Inc., resolution authorizing the town to consent to the appropriation of the parcel by New York State Department of Transportation, authorization to approve the extension of the Chappaqua Bus Transportation contract. This is a retroactive 2024. Sorry about that, we came across it. Authorization.
For camp, just.
Yes, for camp. Authorization to approve healthcare premium rates for 2025 for both UMR Medco and MVP. Authorization to establish the capital project and budget for 2025 DPW facility roof restoration project. Authorization to purchase 2 police vehicles. Authorization to change the chair for the LGBTQ committee, and authorization to use town property, and that's for the book drive.
Okay. Alright, thank you, Jill. Do you feel like going over the proposed actions? Oh, sure. We're going to do that.
These are just
Those are-
retro, right, so they each have their own separate resolution.
Okay, so we can go over them during that time. Okay, so let's get into the resolutions. Holly, do you wanna start?
Sure. I move to adopt the items 1 through 21 as listed in the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to retroactively approve the payment of claims in the amount of $708,914.70 listed on the summary AP check register and detail voucher detail reports dated December 12th, 2024. Checks are printed and distributed to each claimant listed on Friday, December 13th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to retroactively approve the payment of claims in the amount of $318,657.36 listed on the summary AP check register and detail voucher detail reports dated December 20th, 2024. Checks were printed and distributed to each claimant listed on Friday, December 20th, 2024.
Second, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Ally, go ahead.
I move to retroactively approve the payment of claims in the amount of $276,318.09 listed on the summary AP check register and detailed voucher report dated December 31st, 2024. Checks were printed and distributed to each claimant listed on Tuesday, December 31st, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do one more.
I move to retroactively approve the payment of claims, the amount of $636,346.27 listed on the summary AP check register and detailed voucher detail reports, all dated January 10th, 2025. Checks were printed and distributed to each claimant listed on Friday, January 10th, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead.
I move to authorize the hiring of the following individuals for the position of recreation attendants within the Recreation and Parks Department at the corresponding rates and dates as indicated below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to authorize the increase in pay for the following individuals who serve as recreation attendants within the Recreation and Parks Department effective January 20th of this glorious year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jen, go ahead.
I move to authorize the appointment of Greg Ferguson as a member of the Recreation Commission for a 7-year term effective February 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2032.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to approve the subsequent letter agreement and general release regarding police officer number 166.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Move to adjourn.
Go ahead.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lino.
Thank you.